The wind rolled off the red mountains of Dorne like a breath from a kiln, dry, hot, thick with dust that tasted of copper and sand. Under its lash, the yellow grass on the Dornish marches rattled like shaken sabers, and the banners of Sunspear rippled overhead, their spears tipped toward the narrow sea as though daring some distant foe to set foot upon the shore. No rider crossed that border this evening, save the dusty couriers fleeing northward to warn the Stormlands and the reach that the world had cracked open beyond the water. They carried a name in their saddlebags, a name inked in quivering hands upon crumpled parchment. Drogo. Far across the sea, the Khal had spoken the word Dosfiler, blood of my blood, into the ear of his Khaleesi, and everything had changed. Robert Baratheon had always claimed that he could read the scent of a coming battle the way his hounds scented a heart on the wind. On this late summer day in the year 298 after conquest, the king sat half-naked in his cedar-framed bath in the Tower of the Hand, sweat glistening on the rounded curve of his belly. Yet even here the stink of war slipped through the lattice windows. It was there in the hurried clack of boots on stone stair, in the rust-flecked plate left unpolished after morning drills, in the frayed tempers of guards hauled from sleep to man the walls. That hammer-headed brute thinks he can sail horse lords right across the sea, Lord Renly muttered from the doorway, his green doublet hanging open, hair uncombed, cheeks mottled with fatigue. How? The Dothraki fear water. Robert splashed a meaty arm across the bathwater, sending waves to lap against the cedar slats. Fear? Fear is for green boys and small folk. Any man will forget it if the right devil whispers in his ear. He wiped gray-flecked curls from his brow. Find me the devil. Viserys Targaryen, perhaps, Renly offered. Or that fat Pentoshi magister who hosted their wedding feast. A bag of gold buys braver captains than fear breeds cowards. From the corner where he had been silently paging through a tattered stretch of charts, Eddard Stark lifted his gray eyes. And what of the girl? He asked. Daenerys, they named her. She is Drogo's wife. If she rides beside him, let her ride, Robert growled. I'll bury her next to her brother at Storm's End and piss upon the cairn. Yet the king's tone held no triumph, only the tired loathing of an old man who had killed one dragon too many and found each corpse heavier than the last. Outside, the bells of the great September tolled for an afternoon prayer. Within the solar, another bell shivered. A handbell, small and silver, clutched by Grand Maester Pycelle as he tottered in on stooped limbs. My lords, your grace, the old man wheezed. A pigeon from Dorne. Captain Illyrian's outriders report a fleet sighted off the stepstones. 50, perhaps 60 ships. Tall-masted, his parchment trembled like a leaf in winter. The banners. They describe a horse's head crowned in dead men's bells. Robert's bathwater stilled. Bring me armor, the king said. Across the green sweep of the summer sea, where the smoking volcanoes of the Basilisk Isles stained the clouds rust-red, Khal Drogo stood at the prow of a wide-beamed cog he had taken from the Sea Lord of Braavos. The whole craft stank of pitch and foreign spices and the braveries of men who had died screaming when the Dothraki boarded. Drogo neither smelled nor cared. His long braid, hung heavy with bronze bells, coiled across a bare chest slick with salt spray. Beside him, Mago pointed to the western horizon, shouting to make himself heard above the boom of sailcloth. A dragon realm, Khal, the Blood Rider called, eyes bright with kill lust. We will break its spine and raid its cities for goats and grain and golden women. Drogo's mouth twitched, baring white teeth. He had never tasted grain sweeter than the flesh of a conquered lord. Still, a slow cunning simmered beneath the bells. The Iron Islands had given them ships, though they had not known it. The smoking hulks drifting behind the Khalasar's armada would never again bear Kraken banners. Wood is wood, so the smiths of Karth had taught him, melting anchors and nails alike in their forges to fashion crude stables lashed to the decks. Horses whickered below, uneasy upon planks that rose and fell with each swell. Tell them, Drogo said in guttural common tongue, the words thick on his tongue but strong. Tell all riders. The stallions drink the sun at King's Landing. Mago bowed low. Behind the call, Daenerys watched with violet eyes as sharp as shattered amethysts. She had taken to wearing boiled leather over silks, and her silver-blonde hair was woven in a single braid that brushed the small of her back. She smelled war on the wind too. Somewhere in the belly of the ship, a dragon spun within its shell. Not yet quickened, not yet burned, but Daenerys felt the heart fire pulsing all the same. In her dreams, the hatchling screeched for blood, Robert's blood, Cersei's, Viserys, anyone's. It mattered not. From the ramparts of Storm's End, Lord Stannis Baratheon read the Raven twice, his jaw clenching until the parchment crumpled. 60 ships.
Ser Davos se aborte code.
Many more Khalasar follow upon rafts and fishing boats. The Dornish coast is long, my lord, but dragons prefer the grassy plains. Drogo will want the rich fields, Stannis replied. The reach, the riverlands. He'll strike at King's Landing, or he is a fool. His fingers drummed stone. Robert will ride out. He will love it. Those fools on the council will cheer him to the saddle. Davos's eyes flicked to the sea, and the Onion Knight imagined black sails cresting each wave. He had faced pirates, smugglers, slavers, not Dothraki. If the horses land, he whispered, they will drown the small folk in blood. Already, fisherwives whispered of omens, of seaweed twisted into braids, of foals born with cloven hooves. Stannis turned away, cloak snapping in the salt wind. Send word north. Ned will see sense if Robert will not, and call the lords of the narrow sea. The ships of Lys and Myr may be hired. Gold buys any ore. If Drogo wants corpses, let him wrestle the waves for them. Below, the narrow beach that curved like a sickle beneath Storm's End was empty save for gulls. But they circled in awkward gyres, unsettled, as though something vast approached beneath the water that only birds could feel. In King's Landing, the September of Baelor's great plaza seethed with rumor. The gilded claws of the faith militant had been gone only a score of years, yet tongues already spoke of dragging blades from beneath altars if the king failed. Cersei Lannister walked the marble portico with her women, each step measured, every smile a polished dagger. The Khal values strength, she mused aloud. One must wonder how he appraises a drunken stag. Lady Tanda giggled behind a lace fan. Cersei's nails pressed crescent moons into her palm. Win, her mind hissed, or do not come back. Elsewhere, Varys the Spider listened to sailors' songs in fetid Lysine brothels, paying with silver for each verse that spoke of the storm of hooves or the bronze tide. Littlefinger sat alone in the counting house, moving lions and ships carved of jade across a painted map, eyes half-lidded with private mirth. Was there not profit in every bloodletting? The gold cloaks drilled under Yano's slint, yet whispered that the only wall they'd trust against horse lords was 6 feet of stone and 7 inches of steel, through the heart if need be, so that no man fled. King's Landing had weathered rebellions, riots, dragonfire, and doom. But the city felt different now, as if the bricks themselves held their breath, waiting. 2 weeks later, the first black sail touched sand at the mouth of the Greenblood. Dornish sentries loosed shafts, but the Dothraki walked through arrows the way lions walk through grass. When they shouted, the air cracked like summer thunder. Bronze rocks flashed, horsehair banners whipped, and the ground shook under hooves that had never tasted salt until this morning. By nightfall, House Vaetha's manor was aflame, and 700 captives were driven barefoot toward the dunes, their screams carrying beneath a moon the color of old bone. Ser Aaron Santagar lit beacon fires along the walls of Sunspear, but dawn brought only a plume of smoke diffusing on a southerly breeze. Drogo had turned north, driving his riders through the foothills with a speed that mocked ravens. In the Plaza of Ghost Hill, a blood rider nailed the flayed skin of a Dornish scout to the mouth of a well, and the water beneath ran pink for a day and a night. Farther on, at Vaeth, the Dothraki drank raw wine from cracked amphorae and laughed at the spice in it, for they knew nothing of grapes. The riverlands stirred like an awakened bear. Old Lord Hoster Tully raged from his sickbed, demanding bannermen muster on the Trident. Lysa sent ravens to the Vale, pleading for knights, but the Ares roads were thin ribbons falling through high passes, and horses could not fly. Even so, The young Lord Robert Arryn beat his fists on the crescent moon carved above his chair, shrieking that winged men will drop stones on the horsemen, until the maester dosed him with milk of the poppy. Summer's peace cracked like thin ice. 3,000 hoofbeats become a storm. 30,000 become a god's wrath. The old Roynish proverb rang in the mind of Ser Barristan Selmy as he rode beside King Robert's column north of Bitterbridge. The royal host was 12,000 strong, banners bright as field flowers under a cloudless sky. Yet Barristan's gaze kept straying south, toward the faint dust rising beyond the horizon. Scouts claimed Drogo had split his Khalasar, sending a screaming horde east to sack Old Oak while the main body raced for the Rose Road. Behind him, Renly jested with Loras Tyrell, comparing whose armor shone brighter. In war, Barristan knew shine mattered less than strength. The Dothraki wore no plate at all. They wore courage, and courage is steel enough when wielded by men who have never tasted defeat. At dusk, Robert called a halt atop a low ridge carpeted with heather. He raised his warhammer overhead. The stag of House Baratheon worked in gold upon its head, and roared for wine. As squires fetched barrels, a breathless outrider spurred up the slope. "Your Grace," he cried, flinging himself from the saddle. "The call rides. He'll be upon us before first light." Robert smashed a barrel's lid with the hammer and drank, froth running down his beard. He looked back at the faint dust southward and grinned like a boy glimpsing first snow. "Good," he said.
Eddard stark wetchet, silent.
In his hand, a raven's message from Winterfell weighed heavy as lead. Robb had summoned the northern banners. Great John Umber marched, but the neck was leagues away, and pikes trudge where horsemen fly. Ned's dreams filled with fires in the fields of the Reach, orange blossoms blooming where wheat once stood, and the crying of babes. That night, the white heart of the Kingswood came to Ned in his sleep, bleeding from a bronze-edged gash across its throat, and the stag bowed its antlers before him as if begging mercy. When dawn painted the eastern sky a bruised violet, Ned woke to the thunder of hooves painting the land red instead. Drogo's vanguard struck the royal scouts 3 leagues south of Kewie's Cross. They came like knives hurled from a giant's hand, slender, flashing, deadly sure. Some rode in chariots of lashed wood, wheels scythed with bronze that hissed through tall grass. Others loosed arrows in unbroken streams, notching and firing as their ponies galloped. The Stormlander outriders faltered, broke, and died, their bright surcoats ripped to ribbons in the dust. Robert saw the first corpses tumble end over end down the slope and bellowed for his lines to form. The ground was fair, rolling hillocks dotted with thornbush and the broken stump of a shepherd's cot. He put the Reach levies on the left, the Storm Lords on the right, the Royal Household Guard at center. Stark men held reserve. Horns blew, 1,000 shields hammered, and across the meadow the Dothraki answered with Iraq's pounding rawhide drums. They did not charge. Instead they fanned out, a crescent of horsehair braids slashing across the hills. Dust rose, thick and bitter. Sunlight flashed on bronze. Then the crescent folded suddenly in upon itself, feigning retreat. "Mind the trap," Barristan warned. Robert only laughed and spurred ahead, hammer lifted high. Lords and knights thundered after. The ground rushed beneath them, green, gold, green. The air filled with the thrum of bowstrings. Feathered death fell like rain. A black-hafted arrow pierced Lord Caron's visor, dropping him stone still from the saddle. Another sank into the meat of Robert's thigh but found no gap in the plate. The king roared, broke a Dothraki's spine with one swing, and rode on. Ned Stark cut down a second rider, then another and another. Yet each time his sword found flesh, 2 more horsemen wheeled in behind, circling, striking, vanishing. Chaos, shatter, cry, every sense blurred. Screams became wind, dust became fog. The hammering of Ned's heart drowned all. He saw far off the banner of the stag, antlers torn, drooping. He saw Renly's green cloak crushed beneath hooves. He saw Loras Tyrell at Robert's left, lavender plume shorn away, white horse gored, the night of flowers tumbling headlong into hooves that did not slow. Above it all, like a storm god astride thunder, rode Drogo. His braid lashed his spine. His bells sang. His arak danced silver. Ned glimpsed Daenerys behind him, small but unafraid, violet eyes fixed upon the stag banner as though willing it to bend. And something about that gaze, that calm, cold certainty, pierced Ned deeper than any blade. When the sun dipped red toward the horizon, the crescent closed. The Dothraki encirclement snapped shut, and the roiling knot of Baratheon men shrank to a bleeding core. Yet in its heart Robert still fought, roaring each breath, hammer rising and falling in a rhythm older than crowns. Until, amid dust and dusk and smoke, a shadow flitted across his back. The bronze arak slid like a serpent beneath the king's raised arm, bit deep through gorget and mail and flesh. Bells chimed once. Robert Baratheon's hammer slipped from his grasp, landing with a dull thud lost in the thunder of hooves. The king sagged. Those near him cried out. Those farther away felt it in their bones, a silence behind the ears. Robert toppled from his saddle. Night swallowed the field. Cersei felt the moment of that death 300 leagues away, though she would never claim sorcery. She was feeding Tommen honeyed lamprey at supper when her spoon froze halfway to the boy's mouth. Tommen blinked. Joffrey sneered. Up above, the last of the sun spilled molten gold across the city's eastern walls, but Cersei's skin went cold as snow. She tasted iron on her tongue, though the lamprey was sweet. Her husband was dead. She knew it as surely as she knew her own name. She rose, composed, wiped honey from her fingers. "Leave," she told the servants. When they scattered, she knelt before Joffrey, her hands upon his slim shoulders. His eyes were Lannister green, but there was no warmth in them. "You will be king," they seemed to say. "You were born for this." Yet even as she smoothed the collar of his crimson doublet, she imagined Drogo's braid dragging in the dust of the throne room, bells chiming as he knelt to no one. "We will be ready," she told her son, "for anything." The Dothraki did not tarry on the meadow of the broken stag. They set torch to the wounded, their own and their foes alike, and rode on beneath a sky red as a forge. Behind them, the reach burned in a necklace of fires that gleamed on the mander like scattered rubies. Drogo turned east, seeking the Rose Road. His scouts found the gold fields unguarded, the harvest wagons fat, war horses gorged on grain. Ned Stark lay half alive beneath a felled standard, arrow in shoulder, mail black with blood not all his own. When the Khalasar moved out, Mago mistook him for dead. Only at dusk, as carrion crows descended, did Ned roll to his side, choking on dust. He found Robert's body by the shattered stump of a thorn bush, eyes glazed, beard clotted. The once mighty hammer lay broken in two, the bronze stag hacked from its crown. Ned wept, but only for a heartbeat. Then he crawled to the king's corpse and pried loose the signet ring, its ruby the color of spilled summer wine. The realm must know, he thought, or all is lost. When dawn rose upon Ned Stark, he was gone. The carrion crows feasted upon richer meat. At Highgarden, Mace Tyrell counted ships, not sparrows. The red wine fleet had sailed, yet no sail could turn grass into iron. Alone in his chambers, he stared at a map dotted with red wax where castles once stood. The Dothraki outriders harried the roads, severing lines of riders like heads from wheat. His mother, the indomitable Olenna, found him thus, fingers still smeared in wax. "Best join them," she snapped. "Else bend the knee and pray the horse lord finds your cooking adequate." "I will not bend," Mace muttered, but his voice quavered. "Then fight," she said, "but do it soon. The roses wilt." In the smoky ruins of Bitterbridge, Drogo held court beside a well whose stone rim steamed from the day's heat. Captive knights knelt, wrists bound with rawhide. One begged to ransom himself for 300 golden dragons. Another offered a daughter as wife. Drogo listened through a Dothraki interpreter, then shrugged. "Cut their hair," he ordered. To a Dothraki, to shave a man's head was to enslave him. The captives wept as their locks fell, yet each cry fed the Khalasar's hunger for conquest. Drogo dipped a hand into the well, water trickling along scars that crosshatched his forearm. He scoffed at the coolness. "Soft," he murmured in Dothraki. "This land is soft. We ride to stone." Daenerys stood behind him, hands folded upon her belly. The dragon's shell within felt warmer by the day, as though the war itself breathed life into it. She watched the kneeling knights and thought of her brother's sneer, of cold rooms and bravos where she'd lain awake dreaming of home. Now home lay before her, ripe for the taking, and she felt nothing. No triumph, no fear, only a calm as wide as the Dothraki sea. A slaver from Astapor had once told her that when a master breaks a man long enough, the man begins to break himself. Perhaps kingdoms were the same. Word of Robert's death rode on raven's wings. By the time the sun reached its zenith 2 days later, the small council knew, the market stalls knew, even the rats gnawing in the cellars of Flea Bottom knew. Bells tolled thrice, then fell silent. There was no loaf of bread unburned that night, no cup of ale unsoured. The city held its breath, waiting for a crown to fall upon a boy's brow or to shatter upon the stones. In the throne room, Joffrey knelt before the Iron Throne. Cersei guided his hand to the hilt of a Valyrian steel blade taken from the royal armory, Lion's Wrath, forged 6 kings ago. Behind them, Pycelle muttered litanies. Renly wept softly, Littlefinger smiled, and Varys observed in silence. But steel alone would not cow a call. From the sea, black smoke rose. Where the Blackwater rush met the bay, John Cunnington's cell sails caught a fresh easterly and reached for the Vale. But the wind bore a stench of burning grain and spilled blood, and many hearts faltered. The chain across the river mouth glinted in morning sun, a promise and a threat. Some whispered that the kings, pyromancers, brewed wildfire in barrels to fling upon the horse lords. Others murmured that wildfire burned men and horses the same, and kings and small folk too. Inside the Red Keep, old stories woke in stone. Maids swore they heard wings rustling in the dark halls beneath Maegor's holdfast. Great wings, leathery, stirring dust untouched since King Maegor sealed the skulls. Far away in the north, beneath looming pines, Robb Stark marshaled bannermen on the King's Road. Great John Umber roared for war. Lady Mormont offered her she-bears. The Karstarks arrived in steel and shadow. Yet each rider who galloped south carved a deeper wound in Winterfell's defenses, and the gray wolves howled at empty sky as if mourning a battle yet unfought. Robb clenched the hilt of his sword until knuckles went white. "Father will find us," he said. "He will rise." Yet in his heart he felt the world tipping, like a table whose legs had been hacked away. As the host tramped south, hooves drumming frost-scarred ground, a raven winged north across wet clouds, its message sealed with blood-red wax. The king is dead. The horse lord rides. Hold the north. Its croak echoed through the godswood, and the weirwoods whispered of storms to come. Somewhere on the Reach Riverlands border, a modest inn called the Old Cask still stood, untouched by fire or hoof. Arya Stark watched from the loft window as small folk shuffled by, bundles on backs, children clutched to bosoms. They muttered of a giant with a bronze sword whose mere shout split shields, a witch queen with hair of moonlight, horses that ate the faces of the slain. Men of the Night's Watch had once filled Arya's head with tales of giants and others. Now those stories walked in daylight. She gripped needle beneath her cloak. "I'll cut any horse lord who tries to touch me," she vowed. Yet fear gnawed behind her ribs. Fear for her father, her brothers, for Sansa in the castle of the Lannisters, for Jon at the wall. The world felt suddenly too wide, and the ground too thin. Sirio's voice came to her, sharp as the point of her blade. "Just so." She breathed once, twice, then slipped down the stairs into the milling throng. At Bitterbridge, the ashes still glowed when a riderless courser found Ned Stark's body and stood guard beside it through the night. Dawn light revealed the direwolf stitched upon Ned's torn surcoat, and the few surviving Stormlanders that had crawled from the massacre lifted him onto a broken cart. They bound the wound at his shoulder, forced water past parched lips, and said prayers to all 7 gods in hopes one might listen. Ned's breath rattled softly, yet refused to cease. Some called it stubborn northern vigor, Others swore a wolf spirit clung to him. Whatever the truth, his fingers closed tight around Robert's ruby signet. When he woke 3 nights later amid flickering torchlight and groans of the injured, he spoke only 3 words before the fever dragged him under again. Save the realm. In the stepstones, the sea cracked with green fire. Mages hired by Tyrell Gold hurled casks of wildfire from catapults mounted on rocky crags, hoping to burn Drogo's trailing supply ships. Flames leapt skyward, reflecting like auroras in midnight waves. Some ships burned, others slipped through. When dawn came, the blackened hulls bore fresh sails, the kraken of the Ironborn. Balon Greyjoy had sworn fealty to no stag, lion, or dragon, but plunder was plunder. He raided the Reach's coast behind Drogo's march, feasting on the realm's weakness. Thus the storm grew, one wind from the south, one from the west, and in every lord's hall candles guttered at prophetic drafts no maester could trace. It was Maester Luwin who first posited that kingdoms did not fall when walls broke, but when words did. In the rookery at Winterfell, he traced patterns of ravens' routes, finding gaps where messages should fly. Someone kills the birds, he warned Bran, or someone frightens them from the sky. The boy listened from his saddle crutch, feeling the chill of winter creeping through summer's bones. South, at Riverrun, Catelyn watched her father's chest rise and fall, each breath a thread tethering her to childhood. When the raven came bearing Robert's fate, Hoster Tully's eyes opened one last time. He whispered, voice thin as cobweb silk, "Guard them, the wolves and the trout." Then night claimed him, and the utter silence that followed felt thicker than stone. Atop Aegon's high hill, beneath banners drooping in humid stillness, Joffrey Baratheon was crowned with a circlet that felt too heavy for his skull. Cersei's smile was diamond-hard as she placed it. Below, the crowd clapped and cheered, yet the sound echoed thin, carried away on the same warm breeze that blew faint hints of smoke upriver. On a parapet above the courtyard, Sandor Clegane spat over the wall and muttered, "Let them cheer. It ends the first time they see a horse lord run a knight through like a boar." His hound helm glared in the late sun. Beside him, Sansa Stark clutched her hands and thought of songs she once loved. Their stories always spoke of brave princes winning glory in shining mail. None sang of bent banners or kings cut down in flowered fields. Yet here she stood on a tower of dreams, watching invisible doom gallop nearer. The bells tolled dusk. Far off, a dust cloud rose on the horizon, moving faster than any ship on the Blackwater. On Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon found Ser Davos again upon the seawall, staring west at red dusk. "Tell me you have good news," Stannis said, voice rough as broken granite. Davos shook his head. "Only rumor, my lord. Drogo marches for King's Landing, not the Reach. They say his Khalasar moves like a serpent, splitting, striking, joining. No wall has slowed them." Stannis's jaw worked. Walls within walls. Yet a single breach undoes them, like rot in a hull. He turned his gaze seaward. "I stood at Storm's End while Robert roared outside and dragons screamed overhead. I swore no storm would break me. Now I must break storms, and horse lords as well." Davos risked a smile. "You'll do it, my lord." Stannis's eyes glittered, unreadable. Perhaps. Behind them, the Red Woman, Melisandre, watched the sea burn with sunset. "When the flames part," she whispered, "the great stallion shall kneel or burn. One king rides for light, the other for night." Her smile caught the dying sun like a sliver of amber. Night fell upon the Reach as warm and heavy as blood. At Oakheart, lords gathered around a map, arguing which road Drogo would take. In the Riverlands, Edmure Tully drilled peasants with boar spears, cursing in the summer heat. In the north, the moon rode high over Pine, silvering the fur of silent wolves. Each heart beat to its own dread, each blade whetted for dawn. Only Khal Drogo slept soundly, cheek pillowed upon a saddlebag, bells rustling like lullabies. He dreamed of a city of pale towers, of iron thrones, of rivers running wine. In the dream, he strode through a hall of swords without fear, and the swords sang to him, calling him Khan of Kings, stallion who rides the world. At his side walked a woman with eyes of midnight fire, and behind her something stirred, something that split stone with its cry. When he woke, the dawn sky above the reach glimmered gold. Drogo rose, brushed dust from his braid, and took his arak in hand. "Ride," he commanded. And so the Khalasar rode, hoofs pounding the rose road, toward walls older than conquest and crowns hung heavy with the rust of fear, toward a throne forged of swords and a realm balanced on the edge of a single broken hammer. In their wake, fires bloomed, fields blackened, and the songs of old disappeared beneath the thunder of a flood that bore no tide. Some swore they heard the ground itself weep. The rider who slipped into King's Landing at sunset carried only dust on his boots and a simple dirk at his hip, yet the guard at the mud gate shrank from his gaze. "Name?" the guard croaked, breath steaming despite summer heat. "Yora," the man said softly. "Yora Mormont. I bring." He never finished, for above them the bell in the Tower of the Hand began to peal. Once, twice, thrice, each tolled deeper than the one before. The guard turned pale, eyes darting toward the red keep. But Mormont's gaze lifted beyond the towers, beyond the walls, to the far-off hills where dust rose like smoke. And he whispered, so low only the gods might hear, "Khaleesi." The bells tolled on. Rain fell over the reach in soft, mournful sheets, silvering the shattered helms that lay strewn upon the meadow of Bitterbridge. The ground drank the blood of kings and commoners alike, and the once vibrant banners of House Baratheon sank into the muddy earth as though the realm itself would bury every memory of Robert beneath a sodden blanket of grief. Ned Stark, lashed to a litter by maimed Stormlander captains, drifted in and out of a fever-fogged sleep, hearing distant thunder that might have been gods or horsemen or the drum of his own heart. When his eyes cleared, he saw Maester Coleman crouched above him, lantern light dancing across the maester's spectacles. The man whispered of milk of the poppy, of stitches and leeches, of turning the wound each day so rot would not set. Ned forced out a single word, north, but his tongue felt as swollen as a bludgeon. Coleman only shook his head. "The north must wait, my lord. The realm bleeds southward." Outside the tattered rainfly that served as infirmary, the Stormlanders argued over whether to carry the Lord of Winterfell east to Gulltown, where a Tyroshi Sellsail fleet had been sighted, or else west to Old Oak, hoping the Tyrells could spare a wagon train. In the end, the decision was made for them. A black banner topped with a flayed man rode in from the North Road, Karstark mercenaries at its flanks, and behind them a column of Umber pikes. The northern host had reached the Trident only to find no king to join, no brother to greet, nothing but smoke on the southern wind and rumors that a Khal rode for the Iron Throne. So the great gray column turned south and west, pulling carts laden with pitch and pine and the chill breath of winter itself. Great John Umber dismounted in the mud beside Ned's litter, water beading on his braided beard. "Lord Stark," he rumbled, licking rain from cracked lips, "you are needed yet." Ned tried to rise. Pain lanced down his arm and darkness closed in again. He dreamed of Robb on a field of snow, crown of ice upon brow, eyes pale as frozen water, and behind his son stood 1,000 direwolves with red mouths, howling that the time of dragons was done. When at last the delirium loosened its claws, Ned found himself bundled in gray wool aboard a great oxcart rumbling toward Riverrun. The Karstarks rode escort, torches guttering in the damp dusk. Lightning flickered to the south, too distant to hear, but on the horizon a livid band of red glowed where Drogo's Khalasar burned the vineyards of House Verwell. Ned shuddered and whispered a prayer to the old gods for every innocent caught between axe and arak. In the Riverlands the rains came harder, swelling the Red Fork until its brown waters swirled against the outer walls of Riverrun like fists. Inside, Catelyn Stark stood over her father's bier while ravens shrieked in the rookery above, wings beating so frantically the maester dared not enter. Rumors of Robert's death had arrived with the birds. Confirmation came on the lips of a Stormlander squire half dead from arrow wounds. Catelyn pressed a hand to her throat. "He fell." The boy nodded. "And my husband?" He swallowed blood. "Still breathing, my lady." But they ride hard behind us. The boy collapsed, and Catelyn felt something inside her snap like old twine. She ordered 6 ravens loosed, 1 to each bannerman of the Tullus, another to Winterfell and another north to the wall for Jon Snow, if the wind proved kind. But the storm over the Trident shrugged off wings. Every bird that tried to rise found its feathers slick with rain and fell again into the swollen current. Edmure Tully paced the great hall like a fox in a snare. If the Khalasar crosses the Trident at Fairmarket, we cannot hope to bar them. Our levies are spread from Seaguard to Maidenpool. His voice echoed off banners limp with wet. We must fall back on Harrenhal, hold there until Stark and Tyrell smash them between hammer and anvil. Nearby, Brynden Blackfish shook his head. Harrenhal is stone, aye, but stone is nothing to horse archers if they ride round your walls and feast on the countryside behind. He jerked a thumb at the darkened sky. Pray the floods hold. Horses hate deep water. Edmure bit back an oath. The Riverlands had always been a land of green plenty. Now it seemed a sinkhole into which every rumor, every fear, every arrow found its mark. Far to the south, Daenerys Targaryen stood on a low escarpment overlooking the smoldering shell of Bitterbridge, her cloak snapping in the hot wind that rolled north out of the plains. Half the grass was gone, trampled to dust. The other half burned. Khal Drogo surveyed the ruins without expression. Mago boasted of loot, Kotho laughed at the thought of city walls, and Jogo pointed east where a column of smoke marked the little market town of Stony September. Sheep men there, he said, brandishing a curved blade. They will bleed like sheep. Drogo raised a hand and silence fell. No, he said in the common tongue the Magi had forced upon him. Horses drink at the great river first. He spat onto the charred ground. Tomorrow we ride for the Blackwater. Daenerys's hand rested on the pouch at her belt where 3 smooth stones nested. Green as moss agate, cream streaked with gold, black as midnight seas. They pulsed against her palm with a heat that throve on war. Each night she dreamt of wings unfolding in fire. Each dawn the stones lay cool again, but the dream lingered. She turned to Ser Jorah Mormont, who rode up breathless with news. King's Landing had crowned a boy king, Joffrey the Cruel already, if the tongues of fleeing small folk spoke true. The Lannisters fortified every gate, stacked barrels of wildfire under the bridge towers, paid twice the price for every sword that swore fealty. Daenerys listened, silent. A boy on a chair of blades, she said at last. He will see a blade no longer. Jorah nodded, yet fear pinched his eyes. They say the city's alchemists would burn half their own streets before yielding them. Her smile was thin. Let them. Dragonfire cleanses filth. She touched the stones once more, and beneath her glove felt the faintest tremor, like a hatchling stirring in shell. That night Drogo shared meat and mare's milk with his blood riders beneath a red canvas hung with horsehair tassels. The Khal grew restless. War was sweet as fermented mare's milk on his tongue, but these green hills reeked of wet leaves and dung. He longed for the open grass sea where every horizon lay unmarred by tower or hedge. Yet word traveled through his riders that the Iron Throne glittered with jewels plucked from every conquered realm. Its steps of solid gold, its halls roofed in beaten copper that glowed like sunrise. Drogo had little use for gold or jewels, but he imagined the awe on the faces of his unborn sons when they galloped through that hall, bells ringing triumph. He would hang the sword chair round with the scalps of defeated Khals, or perhaps melt those foolish blades into horseshoes for his favorite stallion. Daenerys lay beside him when the campfires died to coals, listening to the soft breathing of 1,000 mares. When we break the city, what then? She asked. Drogo's hand traced a lazy path over her hip. We ride west until the sea becomes grass again. She turned to study his face in starlight. And the people here? The small folk? Drogo shrugged. They follow or they die. She closed her eyes and saw again a throne of swords, saw children starving beneath its shadow, saw a crown of twisted spikes. Somewhere a dragon egg throbbed. In King's Landing the air turned humid as bathhouse steam, the gutters running with green sewage that stank of night soil and fear. Tyrion Lannister arrived under a cloak the color of damp ash, slipping past the guards at the gate of the gods with a purse of coins and a sharper purse of japes. The city he knew as a boy felt smaller now, crowded to bursting with peasants who had fled fires in the Reach, fires in the Stormlands, fires everywhere save in their own hearths, which were cold and empty. The gold cloaks corralled them into makeshift camps beneath the city wall. Plague followed close behind. Tyrion sniffed and thought he smelled grey death rising from the press of bodies. He found Cersei in the small council chamber where cobwebs wove banners from one pillar to the next. The council itself had dwindled to her, Pycelle, and Peter Baelish, with Varys absent these 3 days. His sister's face was drawn tight as a harp string. "If you have come to taunt me with father's opinion, save your breath," she said. Tyrion bowed. "My breath is precious these days, dear sister. The air outside is thick with horse." He planted a hand on the painted table. "We must sue for peace." Cersei's laughter was brittle. "With savages?" They cut off peace and braid it into their hair. Tyrion studied the map spread before her, red stones marking legion strengths, black marking assumed Khalasar companies. "So by their captains," he said. "Even savages have captains, and captains crave gold." Baelish leaned forward, slim fingers drumming. "Gold we have, but time we want." Pycelle coughed, beard trembling. "The alchemists?" Cersei silenced him with a look. Tyrion's eyes flicked to the open ledger of the Guild of Alchemists and felt his throat go dry. Later, climbing the Tower of the Hand Steps 2 at a time, he nearly collided with Sandor Clegane, helm under one arm, hair slick with sweat. "The Boy King demands practice," the Hound growled. Tyrion stepped aside. "Does the Boy King understand practice will not stop an arrow?" Sandor's black dog eyes glinted. "Practice stops fear." Tyrion watched him stride toward the yard. Fear keeps blades sharp, he thought, and fear dulled by arrogance snaps clean when struck. That night the dwarf dined alone with a flagon of Dornish red, reading Maester Halene's treatise on wildfire until his candle guttered. Half the pages spoke of a substance thinner than oil, brighter than the sun, hotter than a dragon's breath. The other half chronicled fires gone awry in forgotten wars, ships that vanished in pillars of jade flame, towers that melted, streets 6 men deep paved with ashes that once were flesh. Tyrion drank deep and wished for water. At Dragonstone the wind blew raw off the narrow sea, whipping Stannis Baratheon's banner of the burning heart until the heart seemed to writhe. The castle's stones were black basalt, pitted like cooled lava, and Melisandre said they remembered an older fire than wildfire, a truer flame. Stannis met her in the chamber of the painted table where his ancestors planned invasion. "My brother is dead," he said without preamble. "My claim is stronger than the boy's." Melisandre's red eyes flickered. "Your claim is in the flames." She passed a hand over a brazier. Embers roared. Within the swirl of orange and gold Stannis saw a crown of antlers aflame, a great stallion trampling a stag, waves crashing green against a red wall. "Fire consumes," she whispered, "yet from ash a king may rise." Stannis felt the blood in his veins beat with drum-tied strength. "We sail before the moon turns," he commanded Ser Davos. "Every ship, the narrow sea will run red by the time the horse lords reach its banks." Davos bowed though worry lined his fa. "Sir." "Storms may scatter us." "Storms never spared me," Stannis muttered. "Yet I stand. Let the sea test Drogo as it tests me." Melisandre smiled at the painted table. "Let burnt blood answer blood burnt." In the Vale, Lisa Arryn's Maester read aloud a scroll sent from Gulltown. 5 Lyseni Dramans anchored in the harbor, their captains boasting of contracts signed to bear Vale knights down the coast. Lisa trembled in her seat. "The Eyrie is impregnable. We need no ships." The Maester bowed. "Ships bring trade, my lady, and news." The next scroll bore darker tidings. An advanced Khalasar of 2,000 outriders forded the Trident at night, arrowing north toward the Neck. Robb Stark's host marched straight into their path. The Maester finished reading. Lisa ordered the scroll burned. "If the wolflings seek death, they will find it without my boy." But high above, on a crescent moon balcony, Young Robert Arryn played with wooden knights, knocking them one by one from a miniature castle wall. "Fly!" he cried. "Fly or die! Fly or die!" His voice echoed off silent stone. South again the Dothraki tide rolled. They swept through the flat meadows of the Reach where harvest wagons half-filled lay abandoned. At Cider Hall the apple orchards blazed pink and crimson under torches, fruit bursting in the heat like heart fire. Peasants fled into the Kingswood thinking trees might shield them. The horse lords burned the trees too. For every mile the Khalasar rode, 10 small folk starved or disappeared. Some were taken as Qurayshi, slaves to tend the mares, cut the meat, carry water. Others were slain for sport or left to rot. Yet Drogo's riders found little pleasure in slaughter for slaughter's sake. Silver, grain, and women mattered more. Blood was drink, not wine. At Ashford a party of Florent knights attempted parley, bearing a peace banner stitched with red fox. They offered guest right, passage, tribute. Drogo listened. Then his bells chimed once as he nodded to Kotho. The Blood Rider severed the banner pole with a scything blow and lopped the envoy's arm at the elbow. "This is my peace," Drogo said in Dothraki. The envoy lived long enough to carry his bleeding stump back through Ashford's postern, screaming. The next dawn smoke crowned Ashford's keep. Robb Stark reached Moat Cailin as sunrise bled along the eastern sky, only to find the causeway choked with terrified small folk and, beyond them, dust clouds where outriders harried the vanguard. The young wolf reined up beneath one of the ruined watchtowers, Great John at his flank. "They rode across the Trident faster than word flew," he muttered. "How?" Maester Vyman hazarded a guess. The Dothraki changed mounts thrice a day, rode night and day both, fed on horses' blood. "They are half demon, these men," he croaked. Robb's hand tightened on his hilt. If the causeway fell, the north lay open. "We break them here or die," he declared. In the marshes men dug ditches filled with sharpened stakes. Others felled pine across the causeway. The reeds swallowed half the logs, but the rest formed a jagged palisade. Greywater Watch sent Crannogman archers who vanished into mist after mapping every hummock. Robb dispatched ravens north to Winterfell, east to White Harbor. Every spare man south of the wall to march. Then he waited, sword bare, listening for the drum of hooves through the rain-washed fog. In King's Landing a fresh wind blew up the Blackwater, snapping the red and gold banners atop the repaired mud gate. On the quay below, 100 wains creaked beneath barrels banded in thin copper. Tyrion oversaw the loading, counting under his breath. Each barrel contained wildfire thick as syrup, each cork sealed with wax stamped by the alchemist's guild. Haleen stood nearby beaming like a proud potter admiring glaze. "For 1,000 pots, my lord," he whispered. 800 more by week's end." Tyrion fought the urge to wipe sweat from his brow. "Deliver them to every catapult crew, split evenly among the towers. If one barrel overheats," Haleen nodded, beard wagging. "The Cellarus line each wagon bed with sand. We know the dangers." Up the bluff inside the Red Keep, Sansa Stark drifted through the Queen's ballroom where 200 noble girls sewed silver thread into Joffrey's coronation cloak. Their laughter sounded brittle. Lady Tanda's daughter slipped a needle, pricked her thumb, and gasped as blood smeared cream velvet. She stared at the stain like a prophecy. Sansa helped wrap the finger, murmured a half-remembered Winterfell lullaby. When she looked up, Cersei Lannister watched from the dais, wine-dark eyes unreadable. Sansa curtsied. The Queen inclined her head the barest fraction. "Fly or die," the words of little Lord Arryn echoed. Her hands trembled as she returned to her needle. In the throne room Tyrion confronted his nephew. Joffrey sat sprawled on the Iron Throne, booted feet resting on a lower step as if it were a footstool. "Uncle," he drawled, "have you come to kiss my crown?" Tyrion bowed. "I have come to save your crown, your grace." He detailed the wildfire plan. Chain the harbor mouth, draw the foe into the Blackwater, then loose Green Hell. Joffrey's lip curled. "A true king meets his enemies open field. A smart king meets them dead before they reach his gate," Tyrion countered. The throne's blades caught torchlight, throwing shards of red across the dwarf's face. Joffrey shifted. "Very well, but I will lead the gate reserve. The city must see its king." Tyrion inclined his head. "Let them see," he thought. "Let them remember." Along the King's Road 20 leagues north, a patrol of Tyrell scouts cantered beneath white roses wilting in the heat. They found a ravaged village, carcasses of sheep hung from the oaks, entrails decorating doorposts. One night wretched, the scout captain found a survivor, a girl of maybe 12 hiding inside a dry well. Her eyes were wide as moons but empty. She spoke one word over and over: "Bells." They carried her back to Lord Mathis Rowan's field camp. Rowan had read scrolls of the doom of Valyria, of Aegon's conquest, of the Blackfyre rebellions, yet nothing in his library taught how to defeat a sea of riders who never broke formation, never starved, never slept. Mace Tyrell urged caution. Olenna urged gold. Rowan prayed to the Seven. No answer came. 2 days later, hundreds of riders crested their picket lines at dawn and torched 300 tents before any man could buckle sword. Lord Rowan escaped mounted bareback, hearing the laughter of men who never laughed in fear. Word of that rout reached Old Town's High Tower, where the Citadel's bells told warning for the first time since the Summer Plague. Archmesters convened in smoky chambers to debate evacuation of the books. Some argued that knowledge belonged to no king, no call. Others spoke of hidden vaults, of scrolls that could not be moved lest they crumble. A dwarf archmaester named Tully called for sending ravens to the wall begging release of dragonglass. "If wildfire fails, obsidian may serve," he croaked. Most scoffed. The Lord of Old Town, Leighton Hightower, had not left his tower in 10 years, but some whispered he studied ancient spells by candles shaped like wyverns. His daughter Malora claimed dragons were gone, but other fire remained, fire too bright even for the Citadel's mirrors. No one listened. On the stone drum of Dragonstone, Melisandre led Stannis past a line of kneeling sailors. Each offered blood for blessing. Each bore a fresh cut across palm or brow. At the foot of the stair she drew a blade forged of strange black steel. Its edge seemed to drink torchlight. Stannis hesitated as she pressed the blade above his heart. "Azor Ahai must forge Lightbringer again," she intoned. "Tempered in blood, woken in smoke, born amid salt." He felt the kiss of iron. "I forged myself at Storm's End," he said, voice rough. "If gods want more, they shall come for it." He turned from her, cloak snapping in sea wind. Melisandre watched, fire dancing in her red eyes, and whispered not to the Lord of Light but to shadows. In the neck, the Dothraki vanguard came before dawn. Fog lay knee-deep on the causeway, clinging to arrow fletchings as the first horseman emerged ghost-pale. Behind him the line fanned wide, but the marsh narrowed. Reeds hemmed them in. They shouted to each other in confusion. A horn blast split the mist. Umber pikemen surged from hidden ditches, wall shields locked. Crannogmen arrows hissed out of the fog. Horses screamed, hooves skidding on slick timber. The first rider fell impaled on stakes, the second drowned in mud. The vanguard recoiled. Great John bellowed curses, swung a long axe one-handed, felled a mare and rider both. Robb Stark rode headlong along the palisade line, sword flashing. His direwolf Grey Wind leapt among panicked stallions, hamstringing beasts twice his weight. The neck swallowed screams. When the sun burned away fog at last, 200 Dothraki lay dead or dying, their bodies half sunk in peat. The survivors fled south, but the marsh slowed them. Lances of Ashwood found their backs. Robb's men cheered, but the victory felt thin. There were 40,000 more riders behind these, and every mile northward the causeway widened. That night Robb stood beneath the canopy of a pine ridge with Galbart Glover and Lord Bolton. "We bled them," he said. "We can bleed them again." Bolton's pale eyes reflected firelight like twin moons. "Or we can cut their head." Drogo marches on the capital. A dagger in the right heart ends a war faster than 1,000 arrows. Robb thought of his father's wound, thought of how close death crept even behind walls. "Perhaps," he whispered, "but one misplaced dagger begins 100 wars." Bolton smiled thin. Then let us place it well. West of King's Landing, the Rose Road became a river of wagons. Small folk scuttled east ahead of smoke curling on the horizon. Behind them marched men of the gold cloaks sent by Janos Slint to impress every able-bodied peasant for spear duty. They lashed stragglers. Some refused and died. The road clogged. Tyrion met a column at the little water crossing, saw children crushed beneath cartwheels. Old women collapsed face down in mud. He commandeered every wagon for the city's stores, paid half in coin, half in threat. Slint protested until Tyrion threatened to strap wildfire to the captain's breastplate. The threat silenced him. In the streets inside the Gate of the Gods, a sect calling themselves Sparrows preached that dragons would come again to punish false kings. They marched barefoot, carrying broken sigils of stag and lion both, chanting for alms and blood. High Septon Aaron tried in vain to quiet them. By sunset, a riot broke in Ragman's Lane. 2 gold cloaks died before the mob scattered. Varys emerged from the gloom beside Tyrion on the city wall, face blank. "Rats flee a sinking ship," he murmured. "We must fix the leaks." Tyrion spat over the battlements. "When the tide comes in, none can patch stone." Varys' smile was sorrowful. "Then swim, my friend." Hundreds of leagues south, beyond the charred orchards, a lone sept stood unharmed, whitewashed walls stark against black earth. Daenerys rode past at midday. The bells of her khalasar hush out of respect at her raised hand. She dismounted before the wooden doors. Inside, 7 crude statues watched her kneel. Figures carved by peasant hands, faces smoothed to featureless ovals. She stared at the mother for a long time. "Protect them," she whispered, uncertain which them she meant. Her lips brushed the stone, rough with splinters. She felt a tremor in her pouch. When she rose, sunlight filtering through cracked thatch danced across her palm like scaled shadows. That night, the eggs glowed faint red where they nestled in her saddlebag. Yora saw and dropped to one knee. "My queen," he gasped. "The world changes." Daenerys laid a hand on his shoulder. "The world burns," she corrected. "Because men lit the fire." She looked west. The dark mass of the Kingswood lay just beyond the flicker of their campfires, a black line on the pale horizon. Beyond that, just 20 leagues, rose the walls of King's Landing. "We march at first light," she said. At dawn, a cold fog clung to the Blackwater Bay. Gulls wheeled above like tatters of ash. On the city's ramparts, Tyrion stared across water smooth as glass. Nothing moved save the chain floating just beneath the surface, links thick as a giant's wrist. Wildfire barges lay moored along the mudflats, crews huddling for warmth though their holds brimmed with hellfire. The dwarf glanced north where the red keep tower pierced cloud. He imagined Cersei pacing, wine goblet clenched, and tried to recall a day when he had not smelled smoke. An hour past sunrise, a horn sounded farther south, deep and distant. Then another answered nearer. A third came rolling off the water like thunder. Tyrion's heart lurched. Along the quay, soldiers scrambled into positions. He wheeled his horse hard. As he reached the King's Gate, Sandor Clegane rode up, Blackhound helm snarling. "They come," Sandor grunted. Tyrion nodded. "Pray we greet them hot." From atop the gatehouse, the first outriders looked like ants scurrying in a plume of dust. But as morning zenithed, the dust resolved into horses, thousands, manes streaming, bronze glinting in the slanted sun. Bells chimed faint on the breeze, tiny, inexorable, a song that made men swallow. Behind the outriders surged a dark band where scythe chariots rolled, blades catching light like grim pennons. Tyrion's mouth went dry. "It begins," he whispered, but Drogo did not charge. The khalasar spread wide, forming a crescent 3 miles long. They halted beyond arrow range. Horns blew a new note, mockery, challenge. Kotho rode forward, carrying a standard of horsehead crown in blood-red dye. He planted it in a rise of yellow grass and rode back. An hour passed. Another. The sun climbed, hammers of heat battering the defenders in their boiled leather. Sel's word captains grumbled. The gold cloaks shifted, sweating. Still the horse lords waited. At midday Tyrion descended the gate stairs into blessed shade where Varys fanned himself. "A game," the eunuch whispered. "They test our patience, our thirst." Tyrion poured water over his head. "We will oblige them with neither." He looked to the river where a faint upstream breeze kissed the bay. "Only with fire." Beyond the fields, hidden in the shadow of Stokeworth's hills, a second Khalasar wing appeared. 20,000 fresh riders having looped the Kingswood unseen. They drew up behind the first crescent, bells echoing off hillsides. A hush fell on the walls. Tyrion heard a prayer burst from Pycelle's cracked lips. Even the hound stood stiff. Then the horns ceased. Khal Drogo nudged his gray stallion forward. He wore a vest of woven bronze rings, hair braids studded with shards of jade taken from Karth. At his left rode Daenerys, clad in oiled leather, hair loose, eggs hidden beneath a corselet dyed midnight blue. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes shone. The couple halted half a bowshot beyond the first stakes. Silence stretched. Sun hammered down. Tyrion's shout broke it. "Archers!" Strings thrummed. Arrows whistled out. Drogo raised a rawhide shield. Daenerys did not flinch. The arrows fell short, their tips thumping earth. A laugh rippled through the ranks of horse lords. Drogo lifted his arak, pointed it at the walls. 30,000 riders surged as one. The ground trembled beneath hooves. Dust rose like apocalypse. Tyrion waved the green banner from the gate parapet. Below, fire crews hauled cords. Catapults cranked back, pots locking. Wildfire simmered inside clay, eager for air. On the river, hidden barges cast off, floating downstream with tide.
Sandor roaret, stand.
Gold cloaks lowered pikes braced between cobbles. Spears rattled on shields. In the distance bells crescendoed. The first ranks of Dothraki split into 3 prongs, 2 veering left and right, the center barreling head-on at the gate of the gods. Arrows fell like rain, some black-fletched, others tipped with unknown poison. Men screamed, catapults loosed, pots shattering among riders. Green fire spilled, clinging to flesh, horsehide, bronze. The scream it birthed lived beyond mortal sound. Yet the horse lords came on, leaping flaming wreckage, riding through walls of heat as though born of it. Every 10 paces an arak rose. Every 10 paces a spear splintered. Atop the rampart Tyrion saw a chariot veer right through boiling smoke and realized too late its aim, the secondary postern. The scythed wheels sheared through log caltrops, scattering defenders. The driver leapt from the platform and scaled the parapet in 2 bounds, curved blade catching the throat of a sergeant. A second rider flung a grapple, snagged Crenel stone, swung himself up, beachhead made. More followed. Tyrion shoved past faltering men, hacked the grapple rope, toppled the second rider screaming into fire below. But others swarmed. Wildfire pots burst along the outer gatehouse. Rock shook under the concussion. Inside the city, bells rang, not for prayer, but alarm. The chain in the bay ratcheted up, links dripping green-lit water. Barge crews loosed their moorings, wind billowing patched sails. As archers on the city wall rained shafts onto the field, Drogo signaled again. A wedge of chariots peeled toward the river mouth, arcs bright as comet tails. Tyrion glanced back. Only a thin skim of water separated those chariots from the first wildfire barge. When the first scythe wheel struck hull plank, spark lit spilled pitch. The barge erupted, column of emerald fury towering 100 feet, ripping sky. The blast flung chariots end over end. Bronze melted like wax. Water caught, burning. Riders plunged in seeking escape, only to surface ablaze screaming. The fire leapt river, impregnated by oily current. It raced along the chain, licking each link like a lover. Yet Drogo did not falter. He drove the central wedge onward, arak a silver blur. Behind him Daenerys drew rein, eyes reflecting green hell like jewels. In that emerald glare something stirred in her pouch. The eggs beat like hearts. She felt heat rise along her spine, felt fire bloom inside chest. Ahead, the gate loomed. Within the gatehouse, Sandor's men slammed a second portcullis. Drogo crashed against the iron teeth, a rack sparking. More riders jammed in behind, pressing weight of flesh and horse and bronze. A battering ram of living fury. Tyrion raced down a stair just as a blaze of smoke engulfed the inner yard. He choked, eyes watering. Crackling overhead, wildfire had kissed the upper rampart. He stumbled into the shadow of the barbican as something vast groaned. An iron tooth tore free. Chain links whined. The gate lurched. Through the ragged gap, Tyrion glimpsed Drogo's braid slick with soot, bells silent. Their eyes met across fire and steel. From behind, a trumpet sounded, a single pure note floating above the chaos. The Hound had rallied the gate reserve. A wedge of armored knights thundered down the causeway, black cloaks snapping. Their charge slammed into the jam of horse lords, steel on bronze, hooves on flesh. The crush splintered. Tyrion pressed forward with a half-dozen sellswords, hacking at riders pinned against the gate. He felt a rack glance off a helm, saw a flash of teeth, tasted someone's blood on his lips. Somewhere a pot ruptured. Green fire spilled, bathing Drogo's stallion in emerald. The beast reared, shrieking. Drogo leapt clear, rolling to his feet, a rack poised. In that instant, the tide of bodies wrenched apart. Sandor crashed through on a destrier bearing iron fangs. His sword rang against Drogo's, sparks showering. The world narrowed to two titans, Hound of the West, Stallion of the East, hurling blow and curse amid falling embers. Tyrion couldn't breathe for the smoke. Distantly, he heard trebuchets on the city's heights release great clay jars that burst among the rear Khalasar ranks, each explosion birthing twin plumes of viridian. Wind shifted. Flames leapt riverward. Kegs along the chain ignited one by one. The bay became a furnace. Sandor slipped. Drogo's arak carved a furrow across breastplate, peeling mail. The Hound roared, drove forward, helm snarling iron jaws. Drogo parried, bells chiming again at last. A song of slaughter. He pivoted, blade scything under edge of the Hound helm. Metal rang. Sandor staggered, blood sprayed. Tyrion lunged, short sword punching between ribs of a rider inches from Drogo. The Khal spun, eyes catching the dwarfs. Recognition?
Surprise?
Tyrion could not say. Then a shriek tore the sky. Unlike any human voice, unlike horse. All paused. From the city's heights, something black and leathery wheeled against smoke-stained clouds, fell in a swift barreling dive, wings corrugated in newborn clumsiness yet terrible. Fire licked its jaws. The dragonling screamed again. Daenerys looked up from beyond the gate, eyes filling with starlight. The egg at her hip had cracked, fissures glowing molten red. Warmth blossomed down her thigh, as though molten gold poured yet did not burn. She reached, fingers brushing shell as brittle as ash. Beneath it the skin was sleek, wet, alive. The dragon swooped low over the battlements, flames spraying from untested throat. A section of the wall erupted in green fire where pots lay racked, and the sky became nightmare. A whirl of jade and orange and the roar of life returning from myth. Drogo stepped back staring, a rack dangling loose. Sandor stumbled into the shadows. Tyrion cursed, half prayer, half oath. In the courtyard men screamed dragon, some in awe, others in horror. High above, the hatchling beat clumsy wings once, twice, then banked toward the burning river as though drawn to kinship of fire. Its scales glistened black-red. Wing membranes glowed translucent where flame shone behind. On the field outside, the Khalasar paused mid-charge. Bells stilled, horses shied. A ripple of ancient dread passed through riders born to open sky yet never to sky bridled by dragon. Daenerys pressed her broken egg to her heart. "Dracarys," she whispered. The dragon answered. Fire cascaded over the bay in a great tongue of orange folding into emerald as it met wildfire vapors. Ships of the royal fleet melted in place. The chains snapped under sudden heat, singing iron pinging across stone. A surge of boiling water swept flaming wreckage against the bank where Dothraki riders tried to wheel away. Horses shrieked, flesh peeling in sheets. Panic tore the crescent gone ragged. The rear ranks broke south. Drogo roared command, but wind carried words away. He looked from the dragon to Daenerys, a question in his eyes. She touched her belly. "The stallion who mounts the world must know wings," she called. He stared, uncomprehending. Inside the gate, Tyrion seized the moment. "Push them back," he bellowed, voice hoarse. Knights surged, axes and maces hammering. Sel's words found courage in dragonfire, hacking at disordered riders. Step by ragged step, the Dothraki press faltered. Drogo fought like a cornered tiger, cutting down 2 knights, tearing a third from saddle. But arrows hissed from the ramparts, black, blue, white. One found his thigh, another scored shoulder. He bared teeth, snapped shaft free, but blood slicked his grip. Sandor lunged from shadow, sword point punching underarm. The arak clattered. The great Khal fell to one knee. Daenerys screamed. Drogo looked up at her, eyes dark as the pit beneath the world, then sank amid dust and smoke. Outside, the crescent dissolved. Riders fled southwest, a ragged stream chased by fire and arrow. Those still in the gatehouse fell beneath gold cloaks or surrendered. Sandor ripped helm free, blood flowing from cheek, spat on the Khal's corpse. Tyrion slumped against a pierced shield, lungs burning. He saw the dragonling settle upon a blackened merlin, wings mantling. Its eyes burned gold. Green fire reflected there, and in that reflection Tyrion saw a war neither won nor lost but changed. The old game had ended. A new one hatched in flame. Overhead the sky cracked with fresh thunder as the first summer storm broke, rain hissing against wildfire, birthing steam that rose to shroud corpse and crown alike. King's Landing breathed smoke and rain and something stranger. Awe. Night fell with no moon, only the flicker of dying fires and the whisper of wings above the bay. In the Red Keep, Cersei held her boy king close, feeling his heart hammer like a caged bird. In her mind she saw bells, blood, smoke, and a girl with silver hair crowned by flame. She tightened her arms and closed her eyes against the memory. Outside, the dragon shrieked once, a note both triumph and mourning, before wheeling eastward into storms yet to break. The realm, like Ned Stark on his litter, still breathed, but each breath came sharper than the last, and the night smelled of ash. Smoke drifted low upon the Blackwater, skulking beneath the storm-gray dawn like a defeated army too ashamed to flee. Rain still hissed where wildfire licked the broken hulks along the riverbank, but the bay itself looked strangely calm, as though the night's terror were someone else's memory. A sooty wind nosed through King's Landing, tugging at tattered banners, whispering across streets strewn with blackened shields and bronze bells melted to useless lumps. Barefoot children scavenged trinkets among the dead. Mothers hauled water for the bloody gutters. Old men muttered that ghosts had fallen in the night and risen again with wings. On Maegor's holdfast, Cersei Lannister studied the city from a balcony glistening with rain. Her gold hair clung dark to her cheeks, and her green eyes traced the smoke until it chased itself into the slate clouds above. Somewhere below, servants scrubbed char and gore from marble steps, but the stains clung like secrets. She could still hear the dragonling scream, an ungodly shriek that froze blood and bowed spine. Yet morning sun found no monster upon the sky. Only gulls circled, picking at flotsam that bobbed on emerald slicks of wildfire. Inside the nursery Tommen slept, one chubby hand clutching a wooden stag. Joffrey, crowned and cloaked, practiced drawing lion's wrath in front of a mirror, watching how the pale light stroked steel. They ran, he told his reflection, voice high with glee, even the horse lord king. He slashed at an invisible foe, but the blade caught the bedpost and jarred his wrist. He winced, then sheathed the sword quickly when the door creaked wide and the hound limped in. Sandor's cheek was swathed in linen, blood seeping through. "Your Grace," he growled, bowing from the waist. "The hand requests audience." Joffrey puffed himself taller. "The dwarf, the imp," Sandor said, voice brittle, "and the council besides. Important matters." Joffrey glanced once more at the mirror. He liked the way the crown sat square upon his head. Tell them a king makes them wait. Sandor's eyes flicked to the sword, then to the boy's swollen wrist, then to the mirror streaked with ash. He said nothing. Tyrion found the council in the Queen's Solar rather than the Tower of the Hand. The tower's top still smoldered where the dragonling had strafed the rampart. Pycelle smelled of burnt rosemary poultice, Baelish of expensive soap and something sour beneath. Fear, perhaps, or greed delayed. Varys wore lavender silk unsinged by smoke and offered a bow so low Tyrion feared the eunuch might never rise. "The Khal is dead," Tyrion said without preamble, dropping a blood-speckled gauntlet upon the table. "See the notch there? Clegane's sword. I saw it bite." Pycelle made the sign of the seven. Baelish's smile tightened. Varys blew a sad little sigh. "A pity. Such a fascinating man." Tyrion raised an eyebrow. "Fascinating corpses threaten no one." Baelish tapped a finger. "His Khalasar still threatens every road south of the Trident. If they learn their king is fallen, they may fight like cornered boars. Or scatter like sheep," Pycelle wheezed hopefully. Tyrion filled a goblet with wine and drank. "The horse that lost its rider still has teeth," he muttered. A hush settled until Varys cleared his throat. "And the girl vanished," Tyrion answered. "Some swear they saw her snatch the tiny beast from the battlement and flee through smoke. Others claim she was carried off by riders when the gate broke." He shrugged. "I trust none." Baelish's coin-bright eyes narrowed. "A dragon in the wrong hands is worth more than gold." Tyrion nodded. "Then we must ensure those hands remain wrong for someone else." They argued borders, levies, grain. Slint burst in cursing short rations. 300 barrels of grain lost when wildfire took the granaries beneath the hill. Tyrion tasked him to scour warehouses, seize every bushel hoarded by merchants. Slint protested. Tyrion threatened to draft his sons as sappers cleaning the river's corpse-choked shallows. The captain bowed himself out. When only 4 remained, Baelish leaned close. "If the girl rides east, we cannot follow across grass with spears alone. A storm is coming from Dragonstone as well." Varys pursed his lips. "Stannis sails." Pycelle's beard quivered. "Traitor brother." Tyrion drained his cup. "Then let them kill each other. We hold the walls." He rose, hand aching from the night's bruises, and limped from the room before they could see the stagger in his step. In the dungeons beneath the Red Keep, damp as old graves, 100 Dothraki prisoners paced straw-strewn cells. Their bronze skin blistered where wildfire kissed it. Their black hair hacked short and stubbled marked them as slaves now by Dothraki law. Some stared blankly. Others spat oaths in guttural rasp. One, a lean youth scarcely older than Arya Stark, crouched muttering, "Khaleesi," again and again like a prayer. When Tyrion entered flanked by 2 Sellsword guards, the prisoners quieted. He studied them, noting who met his gaze and who would not. The lean youth lifted burning eyes. "She lives," he said in broken common. "Moon of life, she will burn you." Tyrion offered a tired smile. "Perhaps, but until then you'll answer questions." The youth hissed something that might have been a curse or a blessing. Tyrion gestured. The guards dragged him forth. "Your call is dead," he said in Dothraki. The youth stiffened but did not lower his eyes. "His blood lives in the queen's belly." Tyrion's brows lifted. "A child." Silence. Tyrion nodded to his guards. They drew the youth closer to torchlight. His wrists trembled, but the defiance did not dim. "You kill me, you kill him," he whispered. "The stallion unborn." Tyrion frowned. Visions of prophecy were a fool's sport, yet he'd seen a dragon hatch upon the wind. He felt the weight of the city's cracked stones overhead and wondered how many dreams could live beneath such ruin. Beyond the Blackwater, the surviving Khalasar gathered in ragged camps between the Kingswood's edge and the burned hillocks that once had grown wheat for the Reach. Where 50,000 had ridden beneath Drogo's Arak, perhaps half that number remained, and those half were blood-mad with grief. Mago, blood-stained and hoarse, paced before a circle of elders. "Drogo is broken," he snarled in their tongue. "We braid ours to mourn him, but we do not kneel to shadows." A new Khal must ride. Kotho raised his arak. The silver woman carries his child. She is Khaleesi still. Another shouted that a Khal who birthed dragons rode beyond death's sky. His wife must rule until the child quickened. They argued until the sun pitched low. In the end, might decided. Kotho slew 2 challengers before Mago's blade slit his throat in the 3rd bout. Bells were cut, braids severed. Mago stood dripping with dusk's blood, hair wild, and declared the Khalasar free to choose their path. Many chose plunder. Some chose east, across the newly repaired Myrish ships that hugged the coast. But a sizable band chose vengeance. Their new Ko Pono, a scarred rider missing an ear, vowed to drench kings landing in blood when night next darkened the moon. They lit signal fires along the Kingswood fringe, beacons to every orphaned rider stalking the hills. Within that camp, beneath a root-knotted oak overlooking the smoldering river, Daenerys Targaryen crouched beside a low fire. The dragonling nestled in her lap, exhausted, wings tucked tight against 2 large bones that still bore ragged scrapes from birth and battle. Its scales shimmered wet black streaked with ember red. Its eyes, molten gold, fluttered beneath thin lids. Jorah Mormont knelt across the flames. "He needs food," the knight said softly. "Fire first," Daenerys replied. She fed the hatchling slivers of roasted horse liver dipped in scalding fat. Its forked tongue darted greedily. Her mind reeled with the night's chaos. The rush of fear when the gate burst. The ache when Drogo crumpled beneath steel she did not know how to heal. The thrill and horror when the egg cracked within her grasp. A husband lost. A child stirring inside maybe. A hatchling clinging to life outside. War had broken the world open, and she stood in the core of its flame. Mormont's eyes lingered on the dragon. The Khalasar fragments. Without Drogo their unity dies. "Then we gather what we can and ride east," she said. "Viserion and Regal will hatch next. They must." She glanced at her saddlebag where the other eggs rested. Still stone, yet warmer by the hour. "Westeros does not yet belong to me. Not while 5 kings bicker for a burnt throne." Jorah brushed rain from his beard. "Stannis sails. Stark holds the neck. Tyrell rallies. You could claim the storm while the sea strikes them blind." She shook her head. "A dragon is 1. A throne needs 3. She stroked the hatchling's jaw. "Let them bleed. Fire will answer ash in its own hour." In the shadows behind her, the lean Dothraki girl Irri watched silently, blade hidden in sleeve, pledged to guard until death. Her eyes flickered to the smoldering walls across the river where fire still painted the sky. The world of men screamed for crowns. Irri only heard song of flame. North of the neck, pine smoke curled above a hastily fortified camp where Robb Stark reviewed the casualty rolls written in Maester Vyman's trembling hand. 300 Umber dead, 200 Karstark lost in the marsh, dozens drowned. Yet their victory along the causeway had bought the North time. Robb's mail still stank of bog water. His face carried a raw cut above the brow where a Dothraki arrow had kissed. The wound throbbed, but grief ached worse. When he'd learned of King Robert's fall, he'd felt as though the world shifted sideways. When ravens brought word of his father's grave hurt, he clenched teeth until blood seeped between. Now another raven perched in Vyman's cage, message tube sealed in wax bearing the direwolf. Robb broke the seal, read the maester's cramped script. "Father crossing ghosts ford under guard," he murmured. "The gods keep him." Great John pounded a fist to his breastplate. "Bring him home and we'll flay every horseman from here to Dorne." Lord Bolton stood behind, pale hands clasped. "Kings seldom ride north if south burns hot." Robb raised eyes. "Yet we must guard the causeway." Bolton inclined his head. "For now." That night Robb walked beyond the camp palisade, gray wind at heel. A chill wind bit. In the sky the comet no longer blazed, but a smudge of ember red still smeared the stars. He closed his eyes. He pictured Winterfell's hearth, Bran's laughter, Rickon hiding behind Mother's skirts. Every step south pulled him further from that memory. Yet he could not turn back. The north bled too if Westeros fell to chaos. He knelt, pressed a hand to damp earth. "Old gods," he whispered, "guide me." The only answer was the croak of a marsh heron and the distant ripple of banners in night wind. Across the bight, wooden piers groaned with weight as Stannis Baratheon's fleet embarked. Tall galleys bearing the fiery heart of the Lord of Light lined the harbor, sails dyed crimson. On Dragonstone's quay, Melisandre blessed each prow with scented oil. Torches flared scarlet as they passed, red light dancing on wet timbers. Sailors muttered half-prayers, half-curses. Davos found Stannis in the captain's cabin of the Fury, bent over charts. "Wind from the south," Davos said. "We can round Massey's Hook in 2 days." Stannis's jaw tightened. "If the gods will hold the storm, and if Lannister galleys lie shattered still," Davos added. "Wildfire did them ill, captains say." Stannis traced a finger toward Blackwater Bay. "We strike at dawn 2 days hence, before Tyrell can close fist around the capital." Davos hesitated. "And the dragon?" Stannis's eyes flickered, flint against flint. "A lizard hardly old enough to fry a squid." "Even a squid can drown a man," Davos murmured. Stannis said nothing. When Davos left, Melisandre emerged from shadows behind the mast. "Fire consumes," she said, "yet it births truth." Stannis rubbed weary eyes. "Truth does not mend hulls." She smiled. "Lightbringer will." She spread slender fingers across his gauntlet hand. "In the flames I saw a stag crowned in shadow, a dragon at his throat. The stag's heart burned with black oil, yet righteous flame cleansed the rot." Stannis exhaled. "Cleanse me, then, but leave ships to wood and sail." Melisandre bowed. "As you command, my king." Her crimson skirts whispered as she withdrew, leaving a scent of cinnamon and smoke hanging in the close cabin air. At Riverrun, Ned Stark lay in a tower chamber smelling of lilac water and lamp oil. The maester of the Trident had cleaned the shoulder wound, stitched muscle, leached black blood. Still fever waxed and waned like a red tide. Catelyn sat bedside, fingers threaded through his. When his eyes opened at last, they were clouded but aware. "Robert," he croaked. Catelyn's mouth trembled. "Gone." Ned's breath caught. "The realm, on the edge of a blade," she whispered. Ned struggled to rise. She pressed him down. "Not yet, he'll..." But his mind churned. "Joffrey, crowned." He shook his head weak. "Illegitimate." She stroked hair from his brow. "Truth will wait." Ned's gaze slid to the window where dawn painted the river bronze. "Truth waits for no man," he said, voice thin. "Send ravens to Stannis. He knows. He must act." Catelyn wanted to soothe, yet the urgency in his eyes burned. She nodded. "I will." She leaned close until his heartbeat slowed. "Robb holds the neck," she told him softly. "Arya vanished from King's Landing before the siege. Varys claims she fled dressed as a boy." Ned's eyelids fluttered. "Arya," he whispered, sword sharp. "Sansa is still betrothed," Catelyn said bitterly. Ned's jaw clenched. "Bide. She lives." He coughed, pain racking but mind clearing. "I must ride." "Soon," Catelyn promised, though fear knotted her stomach. When he slept again, she rose and walked to the window. Clouds roamed heavy, thick with summer rain. In their shifting bellies she fancied she saw shapes. Direwolves, stags, lions, dragons, snarling and snapping, devouring one another until only ash remained. On the Iron Islands, Pike's Cliffs rang with the clangor of forges day and night. Balon Greyjoy stood upon the sea tower parapet, watching Smith's hammer kraken-proud rams for longships bobbing below. A gull cried overhead. Balon paid it no mind. Victarion approached, salt spray flecking beard. "The Lannister fleet is crippled," he reported. "Stormlands burn. Now is our tide." "Bah." Lon's eyes glittered. "Then raise black sails. Pike and plunder while they bleed themselves on dragon fire." Victarion grinned, teeth like pebbles. "Old Wyke prays to drown them." "Drown or burn," Balon said. "They'll choke either way, and our nets will drag treasure from their corpses." He turned inland where thin smoke curled from distant hearths. Let Stark guard his frozen rocks. Let Baratheon fight his brothers. We take the coast. Seaguard, the Manderports, maybe Old Town if gods grant. Victarion hefted his war axe. The drowned god grants salt and stone. Balon lifted a hand to the sharp wind. Salt and stone we have. Now blood. South along the Rose Road, Mace Tyrell's army marched beneath banners newly dyed. A sword lily-white upon green, edges stained crimson where dye vats boiled too long. Lady Olenna rode in a wicker cart, shawl whipped by gusts. She scolded her son's quartermasters, her grandson's courting eyes, the price of onions. Mace bore it with a patient smile that looked more like a grimace. At Tumbler's Falls his outriders captured a band of fleeing Dothraki women and children. Some counsel urged mercy, others ransoms. Olenna ordered warm cloaks and bread but kept them under watch. She eyed one girl whose wrists bore fresh rope burns. "You're from Pentos," she guessed, catching the girl's accent. The girl nodded. "I was freed when the Khalasar boarded." Olenna cupped the girl's chin. "You've watched their council. Tell me how they choose chiefs." The girl told of braids and bells, of strength answered by strength. Olenna snorted. Savages solving problems by haircut. She dismissed the girl with a honey cake, then turned to Lord Rowan. "Find me a barber with a sharp enough blade and we may end this war." In the Vale, the 5 Lyseni ships weighed anchor, newly contracted by Lord Nestor Royce using Arryn silver. Ser Lyn Corbray inspected their decks, low and swift, rigged for lateen sails. "Raiding vessels," he observed. Captain Son, a flamboyant man with 3 gold teeth, bowed. "Delivering vessels, my lord. Goods or knights, all same to Salador." Corbray's mouth twitched. "We sail for Gulltown, a city of little storms," Son said. "But storms nonetheless. My price doubles boarding war." Corbray shrugged. "Better speak to Lady Arryn." The captain made a face. "Ladies bargain, but gold convinces." He spat into the dark water. "Wars find pockets even when they lose kings." High above at the Eyrie, Lisa Arryn swept along moonstone corridors reciting prayers for peace that tasted of panic. Maester Coleman urged sending falcons to Riverrun, to Winterfell, to Dragonstone. Lisa refused to loose a single bird. "The sky is mine," she snapped. "None enters." Coleman bowed, but his eyes strayed east where clouds bruised purple promised storms. In Flea Bottom, rumors bred quicker than lice. Some claimed 3 dragons, others 7, nested atop Aegon's high hill, their dung eating holes through brick. Some said the Queen Mother bargained with the fiery beasts, trading babes for crowns. A tinker from the Riverlands claimed he'd seen a dragon whelp crawl clear of the bay and melt a smith's anvil with its piss. The smith denied losing any anvil but raised prices in case the tale spread. The sparrows marched daily, smashing wine casks, preaching contempt for false idols. They cried that Dragonfire was the god's judgment for incestuous kings and oath-breaking knights. Gold cloaks cracked skulls, but for each sparrow fallen 2 fluttered to replace. Knights grew restless. Whenever the hatchling screamed from across the river, hunting gulls along the charred hulks, dogs bayed, and mothers clutched children tight. East of the city, in a ruined villa commandeered for triage, Arya Stark crouched beneath a long oak table sorting a trove of stolen apples. She wore a grubby tunic, hair hacked boy-short, needles strapped beneath the cloth wrap at her hip. She'd crept through the chaos during the siege, following smoke and screams until finding a trail of small folk fleeing burnt markets. None knew she was a girl. She meant to keep it so. Gendry, his forge-scarred arms splattered with blood turned brown, ducked inside. "I found bread," he whispered, setting a loaf on the dusty plank. Hot pie followed, face smeared with ash. "Soldiers searched the docks," he panted. "Said the wolf girl's worth a lord's ransom." Arya's heart thumped. "Wolf girl," she muttered. "Can't count if they don't look." She bit an apple, juice running. "We leave at dusk," she decided. "Follow the Blackwater up to the God's Eye, then north." Gendry frowned. "Swamps full of dead men. better roads west. Arya shook her head. Roads hold soldiers. River hides secrets. She touched needle's hilt. Water dances. Outside, dusk tinged the smoky horizon crimson. The last shriek of the hatchling drifted faint. Arya's eyes narrowed. She felt the world tilt beneath her like a blade balanced on point. 3 days after the siege, Tyrion discovered a silent corridor beyond the burned armory where few dared roam. The walls there still wept sticky green sap of wildfire. The scent clawed the throat. He walked with a single lantern, its glow strange and sorry against char. He sought the hatchling's roost. Rumor placed it nightly upon the ramparts, wary of dragon-scaled tunnels once sealed by Maegor the Cruel. Halfway down the passage, shadow stirred. A slim figure stepped into light, Sansa Stark. Her hair was bound, dress smoke-stained, eyes wide but determined. "I heard you," she said. "I followed." Tyrion lowered his lantern. "Danger follows us both, sweet lady." She lifted her chin. "My lord, the queen says the dragon is God's punishment. Joffrey says it's a pet to tame. You have sense. Tell me truth." Tyrion sighed. "Truth is the dragonling is hungry and alone, and hunger drives fire. A wise king would fear that." Sansa's shoulders sagged faintly. "Then we are not ruled by wisdom." Tyrion offered a sad smile. "Not yet." They returned together, ghost quiet along melted stone. Tyrion tucked the conversation behind his eyes to ponder later. The girl's courage might rival Arya's after all. The hatchling, the city soon named it Cinder, hunted nightly now, wing beats rough but strengthening. It swooped across the bay, seizing fish near the surface, then roasted them mid-air with sputtering flame. Each morning it perched upon a broken mast jutting from a half-sunk galley, preening molten scales in the sunlight. Archers tried arrows. Shafts glanced off or plunked into water. One pot of wildfire catapulted from shore exploded 20 yards shy, churning the bay into boiling jade. Cinder shrieked and vanished into cloud. After that, the archers missed on purpose. Wildfire stores dwindled. Alchemists begged the king to spare larders of pig fat they used for reagents. Grain stores likewise thinned. Flea-bottom stews turned thin as tears. A city cannot eat ash. Far to the south in Dorne, Prince Doran Martell read dispatches while gout flared hot in his swollen joints. At the window of Sunspear's Tower of the Sun, Princess Arianne traced a finger along the broken spine of the Red Mountains. Robert dead, Drogo dead, dragon born. Her voice trembled between glee and dread. "The viper strikes when the lion sleeps," she mused. Doran's eyes remained upon the parchment. "Lions wake fitful," he said, "and dragons sleep seldom." He set the scroll aside. "We wait. Water runs round rock." Arianne frowned. "Water also evaporates." Doran smiled sadly. "Then we welcome rain." At sea off the Stone Way, Stannis' fleet met storm clouds fat with lightning. Sheets of rain hammered decks. Waves smashed iron-shod prows. Yet the fury cut through. Black sails bellied, banners drenched. Davos on the quarterdeck smelled charred air. Lightning near. He made the sign of the seven he barely believed. Behind him, Melisandre emerged, hair plastered to cheek, eyes ablaze. "The Lord of Light guides," she whispered. A bolt speared the mainmast of a trailing Drummond. Wood exploded, sails ignited, bodies flung screaming into black water. Melisandre lifted arms in benediction. Davos tasted bile, guide indeed. When dawn broke fiery red, there were 3 fewer ships, yet the coast of Massey's Hook lay ahead. Scouts reported Lannister galleys scuttled along the shore, their crews still charred. Melisandre smiled. The sea burns souls before flesh. Stannis stared northward. "If dragon fights lion, we strike with stag." He pressed knuckles white on railing. "Tell drums prepare oars. We ride the tide to war." Within a hollow north of the Kingswood, Daenerys knelt beside Drogo's pyre. It had been 3 days since they recovered his body from the gatehouse rubble. 3 days she'd refused to weep, though Irri begged tears to honor a dead husband's spirit. Instead, she gathered sticks, arranged logs, piled broken rocks. The pyre rose tall as a townhouse. At sunrise, she lit it with her own hand, the hatchling perched upon her shoulder. Flames caught slow, then roared, fed by pitch. Drogo's bells rattled once in the heat, then burst, bronze droplets spitting. Smoke rose white at first, then sang many colors. Gray of loss, black of rage, red of vengeance. Her heart climbed with it, higher than fear. When only embers glowed, she scattered the ashes, mixing them into a canvas pouch with crushed jewel dust from pentos. Amber, amethyst, lapis ground fine. She tied the pouch round her neck.
Kopono vathet grim facet.
"We ride west," he declared. She met his eyes. "You ride where you will. I ride east." Murmurs rippled. Pono fingered his arak. "East is water." She stroked the dragonling's snout. "I have wings." Pono spat. "Khalasar follows strength." She stepped close, so the hatchling hissed smoke into Pono's scarred face. "Strength is fire," she said. He held her gaze a heartbeat, then barked a laugh. "Fire burns wood, not iron." He turned, shouting for riders to mount. Dust billowed as they rode. Many looked back. Some did not ride away. That night, 100 tents remained around Daenerys's small fire. Mostly women, some youths, a dozen seasoned warriors bearing no braids. They had shorn themselves in mourning. She thanked each, gave meat from a single mare roasted over coals. Enough somehow. Yora watched her walk through the firelight, dragon perched small yet mighty. "A Khalasar begins with 10 riders and a dream," he said. She smiled faintly. "Then let us count dreams." Yora unrolled old charts showing the straits to Pentos, Mir, and Lys. Ship captains might still lurk in lonely coves awaiting plunder. Gold remained in a purse sewn to his belt, Illyrio's last gift. "We can hire passage for some," he said, "but not all." Daenerys traced her finger along the coast. "Words sail swifter than ships. Let them think I ride for Volantis. I will send envoys for Celsails unsullied, red priests if need. Dragons grow." She closed the chart. "When they wake adult, I return." She stood, head high, belly flat beneath leather, yet inside maybe life sparked. She felt uncertain but hopeful. Looking west, a bruise of smoke still smeared the starlight. The realm bled. She would not bandage it yet. First she would become the sword. In King's Landing, bells rang for dawn prayers the next morning, though no Septon dared call the dragon's name. Joffrey paraded through the throne room with fresh lilies scattered before his path to mask the stench of smoke. Cersei walked beside, green velvet sweeping marble. Lords gathered to kneel. Mace Tyrell newly arrived, sigil brooch dull with travel dust. Kevin Lannister stern. Harry's SWFT blinking nervously. Pycelle intoned blessings. Baelish smiled thin. Varys bowed, eyes darting shadows. Heralds announced Tyrell's offer: grain, men, gold. In exchange for Sansa Stark's hand to Lord Loras once matters settled. Joffrey scoffed that the girl was already promised to a king. Tyrell swallowed pride. Olenna murmured of annulments quick as marriages. Joffrey waved them silent. "First the stag pretenders," he said. "Then the wolf whelps, then the kraken." He sat upon steel, lion's wrath across lap. "Bring me Robb Stark's head, and I'll wed my own sword." Tyrion covered a wince. Cersei's smile never faltered. When the lords withdrew, Tyrion approached the throne alone. "Your Grace," he began, but Joffrey cut him off. "We send the hound north. Let him fetch me Stark's head." He slew the horse lord. A wolf is easier prey. Tyrion's mouth opened, closed. "The hound heals from wounds inflicted saving your city. Marching north across lines of battle may undo that work." Joffrey's eyes blazed. "Then a new dog. I want the head." He kicked at an imaginary skull. "On a spike." Tyrion bowed and left, pulse throbbing temple hard. As he descended the tower stair, Varys glided from gloom. "Stark banners mass at Moat Cailin," he whispered. "Ironborn raid the western coast. And Stannis, hours from Blackwater." Tyrion sighed. Varys patted sleeve. Chaos is climbing, and we stand atop the ladder, Tyrion muttered, with a dragon nipping rungs behind. As if summoned by words, Cinder alighted that evening on the gate of the gods, wings beating thunder into twilight. 1,000 small folk crowded the square to gape. The dragonling clutched something in talons, a half-charred stag helm, black iron twisted, scorched. It dropped the trophy with a metallic clang, then shrieked, flames sputtering. The folk stepped back in awe and terror. Tyrion watched from a balcony, wine trembling in cup. Dragons brought gifts now. War had acquired taste. Evening closed with glass lightning over distant sea. In the Tower of the Hand, Tyrion sat alone drafting letters to Lord Frey, to Hoster Tully now dead perhaps, to Doran Martell, even to Balon Greyjoy. Promises weighed less than swords but traveled farther. Mid-sentence he paused, quill dripping. Across the room the wildfire lantern flickered green upon stone. He pictured the dragon curling around that gentle flame, eyes reflecting emerald dream. He dipped quill again. "Your Grace," he wrote to Joffrey, "victory requires more than heads. It demands hearts." He thought of Sansa's frightened courage, of Shay hidden in a manse, of cities' orphaned children sleeping hungry. He wondered if hearts could still be bought. Outside thunder rumbled. Far beyond river and ruin, Robb Stark studied stars for omens. Stannis Baratheon steered fury through foaming dark. Daenerys Targaryen whispered to 2 silent eggs, promising dawn and doom. Dragons were once the sum of 10,000 years of Valyria's arrogance. Now they were the world's heartbeat returning. The night deepened, thick with rain, ash, and the hush before storms break bones. No horn sounded, no bell rang. Only quiet breaths of those still alive, each dreaming their claim. Wolf, lion, kraken, stag, rose, sunspear, dragon. The book of fire and blood turned another page in silence, ink yet wet, waiting for the next stroke of fate's quill. Lightning prowled the sky like a starving wolf, its pale fangs flashing above the churn of copper-green sea. By that unearthly light the Fury's sails shuddered and snapped, each mast bowing before wind that reeked of brine and storm wrath. Stannis Baratheon braced himself against the quarterdeck rail, knuckles whitening beneath rain-slick gauntlets, dark beard plastered to a jaw clenched so hard the muscle at its hinge throbbed. Around him men fought to keep the king's flagship steady. Sailors wrestled ropes thick as a child's wrist, Ser Imry Florent barked or commands below, and Davos Seaworth paced the aftercastle, counting heartbeats between thunderclaps the way a quartermaster might measure out hardtack. No lantern burned amid the tempest. Melisandre had ordered every flame snuffed to avoid drawing Lannister watchfires, but when her voice rose in song it seemed the deck itself kindled, planks glowing like coals beneath a forge. Her robes, soaked through, clung to her shape as if woven from blood. Rain sizzled where it touched her bare arms. The sailors gave her wide berth, eyes shining with the dread that creeps between a man's ribs when he knows the gods are watching and displeased. "Storms feed upon doubt," she called above the roar of wind. "Steel your hearts and the sea will part." Steel they had, hearts perhaps less so, yet the fury endured. One by one the flashes overhead drifted east, rumbling toward Blackwater Bay, and behind them night sank again into ink. Davos exhaled. When he glanced aft he found the Red Woman studying him, lips curved in the faintest of smiles. She lifted a hand, whether in blessing or warning he could not tell. As always it felt like both. With dawn the gale slipped away, leaving only greasy swells and a sky the color of old pewter. They were 3 leagues off Sharp Point. Behind them the ragged remains of Stannis' fleet trailed like a wounded snake. The rain had claimed 6 galleys and scattered a dozen more. Stannis' mouth thinned as Davos listed the losses. "Storm or no, we make Blackwater before moonrise." Davos swallowed. "My king, the men need rest. So do lions after feeding." Stannis' blue eyes fixed on the horizon. "We will rest atop the Red Keep." Those same clouds rolled toward King's Landing by mid-morning, bruised and heavy, yet the city's walls still shimmered from the heat of yesterday's wildfire. Tyrion Lannister stood atop the Gate of the Gods watching smoke curl from the blackened Merlin where the dragon lay. Small folk called it Cinder, a name spreading faster than plague, had perched not long before. The creature had vanished with dawn, likely hunting river birds again, yet the talon gouges remained. 3 deep rents through stone, edges glassy where breath had scorched them to slag. He ran gloved fingers along one groove and felt the pulse of the city beneath, the throb of fear masquerading as victory. Boots scuffed behind him. Bronn strode up, helm under one arm, the other lifting a wineskin. "Best keep your wits, halfman," the sellsword said, offering a pull. Stag sails spotted off the hook. Tyrion drank, letting cheap red burn throat. "Stannis moves quicker than rumor. Rumor says the horse lords will return tonight, too." Bronn grinned. "Not sure which devil I fancy less." Tyrion wiped his mouth. "Pray they arrive together. Perhaps they'll kill each other and spare us the trouble." He handed back the skin. "Double rations of ale for the Mud Gate crews, have the wine for the gold cloaks. They fight better sober." Bronn's brow quirked. "Men fight worse hungered." "So do I," Tyrion snapped. "Yet I'll survive." He turned toward the inner city. "Find me the pyromancers. Tell them we need another 500 pots ready by sunset." Bronn chuckled. "Got to love a man who answers dragons with jars of green piss." In the great September of Baelor, the High Septon's sermon faltered as lightning crackled close enough to rattle stained glass. The marble floor trembled. Some claimed it was thunder. Others swore it was the Seven themselves shifting upon celestial thrones. Among the worshippers knelt Sansa Stark, head bowed so low her auburn hair brushed the worn grooves of the stone. She whispered the prayer her mother had taught her in Winterfell winters long ago. "Gentle mother, merciful mother, look upon me with mercy." But the words felt thin, threadbare things. She pressed hands together harder. Last night she had dreamt of a dragon. No fledgling like Cinder, but a great shadow blotting stars, scales dripping wildfire, eyes twin moons of molten iron. It flew above the Trident where trout freshets once fed fields. As its breath washed the water, the river turned to glass and men to statues of ash. When she woke, her cheeks were wet and she could still taste smoke. At the pulpit, the High Septon lifted trembling hands. "Seek solace in the Seven, not in beasts of flame nor kings of false blood." A murmur rolled through pews. The sparrows near the back spat and rattled chains. Gold cloaks edged forward, but Cersei had ordered no arrests within sight of the gods, for fear of riot. Sansa felt eyes on her. Whenever her betrothal was mentioned, whispers followed. "A lion's bride," they hissed. "A wolf in lamb's wool." Outside the sept, rain finally broke. Fat drops hammered tiled roofs and hissed upon the wildfire scars, raising steam that smelled of bile and wet ash. Sansa walked the cloister garden flanked by Ser Boros Blunt, her cloak soaking through. She watched water bead upon thorny stems where roses once bloomed. Every petal had burned away in the siege. Only blackened thorns remained, sharp as truth. Across the river, Arya Stark and her ragged companions skulked through the reeds of the Midwater Marsh, eyes fixed north where a squat stone manse squatted half-collapsed. Smoke rose from its chimney, thin, cautious. Arya unsheathed needle. "Hollow Knight's Manor," whispered Gendry, naming local legend. Hot Pie whimpered, clutching stale bread. Arya silenced them with a glare. They crept close enough to hear clank of pots, murmured river accents. Refugees, no doubt, not gold cloaks. Yet Arya's heart hammered. Every stranger might be a hunter chasing a wolf girl bounty. Rain plastered her hair to skull like a clinging mask. She licked water from lips, tasting iron memory. Stepping through a break in the wall, they found a dozen small folk. 2 graybeard fishermen, a washerwoman, half-starved orphans, sharing thin rabbit broth. No soldiers. Relief slackened Arya's grip, though she kept needle's point lowered but ready. The elder fisherman eyed her, noting sword and stance. "Steel north of the Mander belongs to lords," he said softly. "You a lord's son?" Arya squared shoulders. "A squire. Squire with a girl's eyes," he murmured. A flush heated her cheeks. Before lies tangled, the washerwoman spoke. "Reins for sharing."
Sit, eat.
Gendry crouched first, hunger outracing caution. Hot pie followed. Arya sheathed needle, though not fully. As they slurped watery stew, the old fisherman recounted news. A fleet inbound bearing red hearts aflame. A dragon chilling the sea with blazing breath. Tyrell lords marching north. Worlds cracking, he ended, staring into coals. Arya swallowed. Cracks let seeds sprout. The fisherman nodded slowly, perhaps uncertain whether the boy was naive or wiser than Rain. That night, while the others slept within the ruined hall, Arya slipped outside. Rain had lessened to a damp breath. She looked south where King's Landing's glow-stained clouds. "Father, where are you?" She wondered. She whispered a name, Joffrey, adding it to her list. Then Cersei, Island Pain, the Hound, though he saved her once, he still stood by the king. Polliver, Ser Meryn, the Mountain Lady. The last made her throat ache. She whispered it again as if to keep the memory breathing. In the distance, a soft roar drifted across water, the dragonling hunting. Arya wrapped arms around herself, and for a heartbeat she felt more alone than ever. By second watch that night, thunderheads massed above King's Landing like siege towers forged of storm. The Blackwater shimmered with unnatural luminescence, wildfire oil still afloat, and every fork of lightning painted the slicks a lurid jade. On the parapet of the King's Gate, Sandor Clegane leaned against embrasure stone, bandaged cheek thumping with pulse. Below, the gatehouse courtyard teemed. Smiths repairing bent spearheads, squires hauling buckets of pitch, made stripping slain horses for hide. Rain spattered helmet plumes, softened the reek of blood but could not wash it away. His gaze fixed upon the courtyard arch where Sansa Stark emerged, cloaked in gray, carrying a covered basket. She halted as lightning flared, casting her shadow long across puddles. Then she moved toward the wounded barracks. Sandor watched warily. The girl had courage, or perhaps ignorance. Last time he'd seen eyes like hers, they belonged to a pup cornered by wolves. Not broken, only burning quiet. He pushed from the wall, descending stairs 2 at a time. Inside, the barracks candles guttered, leaking smoke that mixed with scent of boiled wine and sour flesh. Sansa knelt beside a soldier missing half a hand, coaxing him to sip watered mead. Sandor halted at the threshold. Rain pattered on his pauldrons. She looked up, startled. "My lady," he drawled, voice a rasp of gravel. "Rats run from fire." She flinched. He regretted the words instantly. Why bark when she offered succor? The wound on his cheek throbbed, memory a brand. Slowly he stepped closer. "The lion's cub grows fangs," he muttered, meaning Joffrey, but she misunderstood. "I have no fangs," she said. "Only hands to help." She offered him the basket. Honey cakes for the wounded. He accepted one, small, smashed, sticky. He had once dreamed of honey, long ago before screams and fire. He bit, tasted ash and sugar. "Keep your sweetness," he said, though gently. Sansa's eyes widened as he turned away. "Sir, thank you," he grunted, unsure if she thanked him or apologized for fear. Outside the barack, he leaned against a wall, half the cake crumbling in fist. Far above, thunder cracked. The dragon shrieked once, a distant echo. Sandor crushed the cake to paste. South of the Blackwater, Kopono's Vengeance Khalasar skirted the Kingswood at dawn. 2,000 riders and thrice that in camp wives, slaves, scrawny ponies. A patchwork horde now. Survivors of 20 banners, disgraced warriors without braids. Sellsword deserters hungry for loot that remained beyond Fallen Gate. They rode silent save the jangle of stolen bells. Anger fused them like iron-hammered blind, each dreaming of vengeance not for Drogo but for lost kin, lost pride. They found closed roads along the Rose Road. Tyrell scouts torched bridges. So they turned east toward the fields of the Crownlands, less guarded, ripe with last wheat. Smoke columns followed them. At midday they caught a lone courier galloping north, a red apple seal on his satchel. They dragged him before Kopono. The courier spat curses in High Valyrian, grandson of some Free Cities banker perhaps. Kopono split him from navel to nose with one clean stroke, then fed the heart to his horse. No one spoke. Blood wetted dust. They rode on. But scouts soon returned with ill news. Stag sails on the horizon, war drums echoing across bay. A south wind carried the briny scent of a great fleet approaching. Ko Pono's lieutenants argued. Some urged a night assault on the walls while lions diverted forces to sea. Others counseled retreat into the Kingswood. Pono spat on those of weak stomach. Dragon or stag, both bleed. He ordered fires amassed, pitch stolen from ruined farmsteads, arrows tipped with glass. They would strike tonight. And if the city burned green again, they would ride its smoke. Back in Riverrun, Ned Stark awoke to the peal of bells tolling a funeral for Hoster Tully. A deep, rolling lament that vibrated through every flagstone much as war drums shook the earth beyond. He attempted to rise. Pain swamped him. Maester Vyman rushed in, pressed him back. A fortnight yet before stitches knit. Ned's gray eyes burned. There is no fortnight. Then 7 days, the maester pleaded. At least see if the fever returns. But Ned's fingers closed on the maester's sleeve. Fetch parchment. He wrote slow, left hand trembling, shoulder aflame. A letter to Stannis acknowledging truth of Joffrey's birth. To Robb urging caution. To Catelyn words of love. To Jon Snow at the wall, cryptic lines about blood beyond birthright. He sealed each with wax softened over lantern. Raven tomorrow, he whispered, if gods allow. When Vyman left, Ned stared at ceiling beams dark with age. He remembered winter nights in Winterfell's library, Bran climbing rafters, Arya flicking candle wax at Sansa. He heard Robb practicing with wooden sword in the yard. He smelled fresh-baked bread. He tasted mead spiced with cinnamon. All a world away. Dread pressed upon his chest, but purpose buoyed him. He would ride soon, wounds be damned. The realm needed truth, and he carried it still. Sleep claimed him at last, filled with dreams of wolves running through king's shadows, howling at a blood-red dawn. West of the Twins, on a muddy rise overlooking the Green Fork, Lady Catelyn met Ser Brynden Blackfish beneath a flapping awning. Rain made rivulets of his weathered face. Riders arriving from the Neck brought news of Robb's defense, the slain Dothraki vanguard, Bolton's grim counsel. Catelyn listened, worry gnawing deeper. Lord Bolton plots like a spider, she said. Robb must keep his own counsel. Bryndon's gray hair snapped in wind. The young wolf has sharper teeth than Bolton expects. But Bolton's fangs drip poison, she muttered. They conferred about Frey neutrality, Tully loyalties, Tywin Lannister's western movements. Then Brynden nodded to a messenger soaked to bone. Ravens from White Harbor report Ironborn raiders sighted off the rills. Catelyn shut her eyes briefly. The Seven Sprout heads faster than we can swing. She straightened. We ride for Moat Cailin at dawn. The boy needs his mother. The Blackfish hesitated. Your father's funeral. Duty rides first, she said, voice dull with exhaustion. Father would understand. At sea again, Stannis' fleet rode on black waves beneath cloud-choked sunset. Fires burned on deck braziers to dry sodden rigging. Melisandre walked among them, chanting in an old Valyrian tongue. Sailors eyed her warily. Some made the sign of the seven, others spat salt. The Red Woman ignored both. In the captain's galley, Stannis seated at rough map table while Ser Imry argued for attacking the river chain by night. Davos pointed out wildfire slicks still burning in patches. Ramming through risk turning every ship into a torch. Better wait until rain quenches the bay, the Onion Knight advised. Stannis' jaw worked. Wait and lion claws dig deeper. Imry pounded fist. The chain is rusted from heat. 2 war galleys abreast will break it. Davos frowned. If wildfire barrels remain, blast might lift entire prow. Stannis considered. We sail half fleet under cover of storm clouds. If the dragon returns, we shield masts in wet hides. Imry smirked at Davos. The knight merely bowed. Later, alone upon the prow, Davos watched distant flashes along the coast. Maybe lightning, maybe torch-stood armies. He fingered the pouch about his neck, containing finger bones the king once cut off and later returned. A reminder, Stannis said, of justice. Davos whispered to the darkness. Grant me wind, and I will row through hell. The sea answered with hush of waves slapping hull, whispering secrets deeper than any gods. In a nameless glade north of the Kingswood, Daenerys woke beneath a sky blushing dully with approaching dawn. Rain beads clung to horsehair tent. She rose, shoulders stiff, and stepped into cool pre-dawn hush. The camp slept. A hush of children curled under hides, of former slaves dreaming new freedoms, of old warriors clutching broken bells like relics. Yora sat by the dying fire, sharpening his sword. The dragonling sprawled atop a warm stone nearby, wings twitching as it dozed. She crouched, stroking one small obsidian black wing. Dream of skies wider than fear, she murmured in Valyrian. Its eyes flicked open gold-bright before sliding shut again. Irri approached with a waterskin. Khaleesi, she whispered. Scouts return. A young rider, hair cropped short in mourning, knelt. Wood for 10 fires, water for half. Hunters bring 2 boar. Daenerys nodded. Tonight we feast. Tomorrow we ride. Which way? Blood of my blood? She glanced east, then west, then skyward. South for now to the stepstones. Ships hide in coves. Captain's gold awaits. The rider bowed and left. Yora sheathed sword. Stepstones crawl with pirates. She laid a hand upon the dragon's back. Pirates sell passage cheap if price is fear. Yora's brow furrowed. And if they sell betrayal? She met his gaze. Dragons eat betrayal. She rose, leather creaking, eyes glittering with dawn fire. Let the realm think me broken. I gather flame. She turned toward the sleeping eggs within her tent. A faint warmth glowed from beneath the hide heartbeat of a future forging. Lightning forked above King's Landing just as Kopono's advance riders reached the muddy flats south of the Mud Gate. Rain fell harder now, muting hoofbeats. The city's walls loomed dark, broken in places where wildfire had eaten stone, but still tall. Pono raised a hand, halting column. Behind them carts rolled, stacked with casks of pitch and bundles of dry rushes soaked in lamp oil salvaged from farmhouses. In the distance, the Blackwater glinted under sporadic flashes of lightning. Beyond it, shapes of ships ghosted, oars chopping water. Stags fight lions on water, Pono growled to his lieutenants. We strike while claws clash. He ordered 200 riders to circle north along the riverbank, faint at the gate of the gods, and lure defenders off the walls. The rest would ignite pitch bombs and hurl them over parapets. Fire for fire. If gods favored, the green demon would feed upon itself again. They waited for deeper dark, hoods drawn, eyes reflecting lightning like pinpricks of malice. Within the Red Keep's armory, Tyrion oversaw final assignment of wildfire pots. Iron cradles lined corridors, black clay jars atop each, corks sealed with wax and lead. Haleen the pyromancer muttered incantations as apprentices chalked sigils onto jars for luck. The smell of niter made Tyrion's head ache, yet he checked each manifest. At last he dismissed the pages and sank onto a bench between crates salted from the storm. Footsteps approached. Shay slipped from behind a stack of battered shields, eyes wide. You promised to keep me safe, she whispered. He pulled her close, pressing forehead to hers. Stay in the cellar tunnels. They're sealed stone. Tears glinted. Stone cracks. He cupped her cheek. Not with you inside. The only cracks will be above, where fools fight. She studied him. You are a fool too. He laughed raggedly. The biggest. She kissed him, tasting ashen fear. A horn blared outside, deep, wavering. Tyrion stiffened. That's the Mud Gate signal. Shay pressed his hand to her lips, then disappeared into shadows. Tyrion fastened leather jerkin, grabbed his helm, and limped toward daylight. Rain hammered down as Sandor Clegane led a detachment to reinforce the Mud Gate. Arrow slits glowed faint where torches had been lit despite Cersei's orders. The hound spat. Fire in narrow slits only blinded archers. He shoved past a trembling sergeant and climbed the stair to battlements slick with moss. Lightning revealed the fields beyond. riders fanning wide, torches sputtering behind. "Horse shit," Sandor muttered, fear prickling. The last time he'd faced riders, they'd poured through that very breach. Memories of Iraq blades flashed. He shook them off. "Archers," he roared. Men knocked shafts. The first wave of arrows hissed into rain, many dropping short, but a scream rose when one found flesh. Below, in the courtyard, Tyrion arrived astride a shaggy black gelding too placid for battle but sure-footed on slick cobbles. Bronn appeared with a small cadre of sellswords bearing pavis shields. "They'll push for the gate again," Tyrion said. Bronn wiped rain from brows. "Unless the stag fleet gives them pause." A second horn sounded, from river this time. Tyrion's heart leapt. "Stannis," he muttered. Beautiful timing. Atop the wall, Sandor could make out faint silhouettes on the river. Masts crowned with antlered sigils, hulls or churning. The first galley already neared the chain. But between ships and shore, wildfire slicks still burned where barrels popped like lightning. If storms didn't douse that hell, Stannis rowers might regret haste. "Signal the alchemists," Tyrion shouted. A runner sprinted toward tower. Seconds later, 3 green flares burst skyward. On the roof of a storehouse near the quay, Helene's apprentices swung bronze mirrors, catching lightning flare, reflecting into prearranged lenses that magnified glow toward river. Invisible orders flew. In the fields, Pono's riders saw green flare arcs. Some reigned uncertain. Pono bellowed curse and spurred forward, spear leveled. His vanguard slashed through caltrops, hooves sparking on iron. Behind, slaves lit pitch bundles and lobbed them over walls. Most burst apart midair, sputtering wet. A few struck parapet, spilling flame. Gold cloaks yelped, stamping out. Sandor barked orders until his throat raw. An arrow grazed his helm, he snarled. "Throw them back!" He raised shield as a flaming jar landed, shattering. Green fire splashed. A soldier shrieked, face alight. Sandor shoved him over rampart. Better quick death than spread. Fear's old demon rose within. The smell of flesh cooking, screams of brothers' cruelty long past. But he muttered half-remembered prayer to the mother and held ground. Across the river, calamity blossomed. Stannis' lead galley struck a submerged wildfire slick. Flame climbed the hull like serpents. Oars caught, exploding. Men leapt, burning into boiling jade water. Behind, the Fury veered starboard, steering clear. Ser Imrys Drummond rammed the chain's capstan tower, timbers shattering. On shore, King's Landing engineers hauled on pulleys to raise the chain. 2 lengths above water when the warship collided, snapping links. The tower toppled, crushing men. The chain sagged, half submerged again and opening. Stannis' second wave poured forward, shields up against stray green flame. Davos at the prow of the Black Betha shouted orders. Crossbowmen lofted bolts at wall defenders harrying the horse lords. For a breath, stag and horse shared enemy. Pono saw opportunity. He wheeled, driving his wedge between 2 gate towers where fire had weakened mortar. Ladders slammed stone. Dothraki scrambled upward with knives and teeth, soaked hides warding flame. Sandor met first blade, hacking arm at elbow. Rain steamed on bloodied stone. A second horseman vaulted rampart, Iraq humming. Sandor parried, riposted, gutting him. Lightning flashed, freezing tableau. Below, Tyrion urged his horse toward the ladders. Bronze sellswords heaved grappling hooks, snagged rungs, yanked ladders backward. Riders tumbled, bones cracking. Tyrion felt sick but pressed on. He smashed a pot of lamp oil across base of another ladder. Bronn tossed torch. Flame roared. Smoke stung eyes. In the courtyard, a thunderous crack split air. Pono and dozen riders breached a sally port pried open earlier by hidden sympathizers. They galloped into yard, Iraq's flashing. Gold cloaks fled. Tyrion wheeled. Pain shot from injured hip. He drew a short spear from saddle sheath. Bronn swore and followed. Pono's horse barreled straight for the dwarf, eyes rolling. Tyrion braced spear, ramming point into gap between plates on rider's thigh. The spear snapped. Pono roared, swinging Iraq. Tyrion ducked, felt blade kiss helm rim. Bronze arrow thudded into Pono's side. The horse reared. Pono tumbled, hitting cobbles hard. Still he staggered up, blood gushing. He dragged Tyrion from saddle, lifted a rack two-handed. Sudden green fire erupted from a cart nearby. Wildfire pot struck by stray torch. The blast threw all three men apart. Tyrion landed on back, helm ringing. Heat singed beard. Through blurred vision he saw Pono crawling, one arm afire. The rider shrieked, beating flame. More pots ignited. Bronn seized Tyrion by collar, dragging him away just as a second blast hurled chunks of stone. Above, Sandor chased final attackers from rampart. Rain tamped wildfire but slick oil spread. The hoe. Endy's cloak smoldered. He slung it off, chest heaving. Looking down he saw Tyrion limp amid smoking debris, blood on face. For a heartbeat something like concern flickered before he charged along parapet to the tower stairs. On the river the Fury slipped past Chain Gap, catapults launching flaming pitch at wall towers. Quivers of barbed bolts hammered parapets. Joffrey, from the safety of the Red Keep's highest terrace, watched wide-eyed while pyromancers readied last reserves. Cersei stood behind, lips moving in silent litany. Burn them all, burn them all. Slint arrived with report of breaches. She slapped him hard enough to draw blood. Hold the gate, she hissed, or feed your entrails to vultures. Joffrey's hand trembled on sword pommel, a boy glimpsing the abyss beneath crowns. Lightning shattered a mast atop Ser Imry's flagship. The broken spar speared deck, shattering lines. The ship luffed, turned broadside to flame slick. Caught. Men screamed. Stannis' voice thundered across waves, commanding reserve to flank North Channel. On the mud gate battlements, Sandor reached Tyrion as maesters hauled him toward Inner Ward. The dwarf's face was half-masked in blood, one eye swollen. Hold still, imp, Sandor grunted. Tyrion's lips peeled back. We hold. For now. Sandor surveyed fires, falling debris, river fight. For now, he repeated, not sounding sure. Many leagues away, Arya Stark woke to thunder and smell of wet ashes. Fishermen camp empty. They'd fled before dawn, fearing dragon or army. Gendry shook her shoulder. Riders on Great Road, he whispered. Fly banners of stag. Arya rubbed eyes. If stag beat lion, maybe father free. But father wounded, Ravens said. She bit lip. We go north still. Hot Pie groaned. But north is cold. Cold better than dead. She shot back. She gathered pack. Move quiet. They slipped away into mist. Thunder rumbled behind. Echo of wars swallowing men's names like stones dropped in deep well. Arya touched needle. She would not be swallowed. She would cut darkness to ribbons. As storm dragged toward midnight, rain blotted flames, drowning Green Demon at last. Stannis' Marines breached River Gate, clashing inside walls. Pono died choking blood, bronze dagger through throat. The Horse Lords, leaderless, scattered beneath arrow storms, many cut down by gold cloaks angry and drunk on vengeance. Stannis' men pushed deeper but found every street a maze of boiling oil and falling rocks. Tyrion, bandaged and half-blind, led short sorties that bled them, then fell back behind barricades of overturned wagons. By dawn the river ran red, driftwood of corpses bobbing against pilings. Smoke hung low. Stannis' banners still flew over Rivergate, but lions retained hill and keep, a stalemate forged by blood and fire. On a charred mast at Bay's center, cinder spread wings at sunrise, crimson light flaring through membranes. It shrieked into sky. Echo answered. From south, faint but growing. A second cry, richer, deeper. On the far horizon, two shapes wheeled, silhouettes against fresh dawn. One pale cream, one green shimmering like dusk. The other eggs had hatched. In the quiet aftermath, every soul in King's Landing looked skyward. Some knelt, some wept, some cursed. Tyrion, propped on a crutch atop the great September steps, glimpsed three dragons against dawn and laughed. Ragged, wondrous, terrified laughter. "7 save us," he whispered. The game grows teeth. In the Kingswood clearing, Daenerys felt the sky tremble. She lifted arms, and the dragonling upon her shoulder answered, wings beating. She saw distant specks closing, her children. Behind her, riders stirred, murmuring awe. She smiled through tears of grief and joy. Fire had birthed her family anew. Ash had fed their wings. Now, she said to Yora, voice aflame, we fly east, but one day we return. She touched the pouch of Drogo's ashes. And on that day, thrones will kneel or burn. Waves crashed against Blackwater docks. Cheers and screams rose in equal measure. Cersei watched from tower window, goblet trembling in hand, and felt the realm spin on an axis forged of dragon bone and broken crowns. The wind carried new thunder, wings beating. War had been a storm. Now the storm had hatched a hurricane. The rain hardened as dawn relinquished its hold, battering scorched stone and turning every alley of King's Landing into a sluiceway of black ash and pink water. The scent of damp gore and shattered lantern glass rose over the city walls like incense from some half-forgotten god of ruin. On the parapets of the King's Gate, Sandor Clegane squinted at the sliver of gray sky emerging beyond the storm, watching the stag banners ripple over the charred river gate while lion pennants still snarled atop Maegor's holdfast. Stalemate cloaked the city like a damp blanket, smothering cheers before they could kindle into triumph. He spat blood. The cut inside his cheek reopened each time he gritted his teeth, and shambled across the stones toward an aid post where someone had promised vinegar and a clean rag. Promises peddled easy as whores since the dragon fires, and fulfilled as rarely. Behind him, the burned-out remnants of Ko Pono's ladders sizzled where steam drifted from weakened mortar. Black flies already circled the heaps of half-cooked corpses strewn along the base of the wall. The hound tried not to breathe. Some men feared death. He feared the stink of it on fire, feared flesh melting like tallow, feared screams that never stopped echoing in the hollows of his skull. He jerked at an arrow stub lodged between two merlins and flung it away. The shaft clattered over and lodged point down in the alley below, a grim signpost to nowhere. In the ward, Tyrion Lannister lay propped against a wagon wheel while Maester Franken probed the gash along his scalp. One eye swollen shut, hair slick with mud and drying blood. He looked less a lord than a half-drowned rat too stubborn to sink. "Stitch gently," he muttered, though each prick made his foot twitch. Franken grumbled that stitches were kinder than the imp deserved. "We lose half the yard to flames because your green demon leaps pot to pot," the maester said between knots. Tyrion ground his teeth. "Yet the other half still stands. Pray give the demon proper thanks." When Sandor limped near, Tyrion turned his good eye. "Hound," he rasped. "I need 36 men on the inner curtain before dusk. Stannis will test it once the weather clears." Sandor wiped rainwater from brow. "Find someone else. You're sworn to the king, Clegane. The king cowers in his tower braiding his mother's hair. Let him fetch his own men." Franken sucked air between teeth but kept silent. Tyrion's mouth twisted. "If you abandon post, the lions will feast on your heart." Sandor's laugh came low and raw. "Leching shock." He turned and limped off, rag forgotten, leaving Tyrion staring at the man's broad back until Franken tugged thread and forced a hiss. A thunderclap rolled overhead, but it was no longer thunder. Across the bay 3 dragons wheeled through low cloud, one smoke black, one pale cream, one green like verdigris on old bronze, each trailing steam off damp wings. Their roars braided with the boom of waves smashing the ruined chain tower. Small folk dropped to knees in the streets, some in worship, others in terror. Gold cloaks stiffened on battlements, eyes wide. Above the Tower of the Hand, the red banner of House Lannister fluttered as if trying to hide from the sky. Joffrey watched from a terrace, mouth parted, fingers digging into stone merlin until knuckles blanched. "They multiply," he whispered. Cersei's breath fogged the cold air beside him. "All beasts breed," she said, though her voice shook. "Dragons did not tarry." Cinder and its clutchmates circled thrice, screeching challenge, then swept southward on a downdraft, vanishing into the bruised horizon. Only their echoes lingered, drifting like embers on the wind. The city exhaled, though no breath eased its dread. 2 leagues west of the Stepstones, the sea boiled about a scorched wreck where Stannis' galley Queen Alysanne foundered, decks awash with burning pitch that no wave could quench. Davos Seaworth clung to the Fury's railing, watching sailors hack free the tangled rigging of a cousin vessel that had drifted too near the slick. Flames leapt from sea to sail faster than men could curse. Davos barked orders. Cut it loose, cut it all, while grapnels clanged and ropes hissed in steam. When the last line snapped, the doomed ship careened away like a torch set adrift, lighting grim dawn beneath black clouds. On the foredeck, Stannis Baratheon examined the havoc with eyes of tempered ice. The mortality of ship and sail stirred no pity, only fury at wasted time. Every minute buys the lion another breath, he said as Davos approached, beard dripping. If fire is the lion's shield, we drown it with storm. Davos followed the king's gaze upmast, where Melisandre stood balanced on the yardarm like some crimson heron, wind whipping her skirts. She clutched a blazing brand, the flame swaying yet never snuffed though rain returned in slanting sheets. Storms serve you, she called down. The Lord of Light bends all skies to his champion's will. Sailors muttered prayers to Mother and Smith, but worked all the same. Stannis turned to Davos. The harbor chain lies broken. Our galleys can slip inside. We land men at the fish market quay by nightfall. You pilot the Betha. She's fastest now. Davos's stomach nodded. Wildfire still slicked that channel like venom. Yet he bowed. As you command, my king. Lightning forked across roiling cloud, framing Melisandre's silhouette in stark shadow. Davos tasted salt and smoke on the wind and wondered which consumed a man more swiftly, sea, fire, or zeal. East-southeast of King's Landing, a small cove nestled between 2 limestone cliffs served as haven for a ramshackle flotilla. 3 Pentoshi cogs, a narrow Myrish galley with patched sails, and an old Carthene spice runner whose hull bore scars from pirate steel. On the sandy flat beyond, Daenerys Targaryen inspected the fleet under a sky the color of dull pewter. Her cream dragon, its scales now drying to a pearly sheen, perched upon a toppled column, eyes tracking gulls. The green dragon circled overhead, diving at schools of fish that shimmered in the shallows. Cinder clung to her shoulder, talons pricking through boiled leather yet causing no wound. It preened, proud to belong. Captain Ternolo, a bald Lyseni with gold rings through both nipples, presented a parchment ledger of costs. Crew wages, provisions, hazard fees that grew taller by the line. Daenerys glanced once, then folded it. You sail for Volantis tonight, she said in the trader's tongue. Ternolo's grin froze. Tonight? Half crew still drunk from fear. My queen. Better dawn. She reached up, stroking Cinder's jaw. The dragonlet hissed, smoke curling between needle teeth. Ternolo swallowed. At your will. At my will, she echoed, and the Lyseni bowed so low his rings touched keel timber. Yora joined her at the water's edge. 3 ships cannot hold a khalasar. She watched eerie martial women and children toward planks laid across tide pools, guiding them to the largest cog. Those who remain sail, she said. Others ride east along coasts to Meereen. I will buy their freedom there when dragons grow. Yora stared at the infant dragons. They grow each hour. You said yourself their bellies burn hotter than forge. She nodded. Yet they are hatchlings still. A city cannot be conquered on hatchling wings. Her eyes drifted toward King's Landing's distant smear of smoke. But a city can be warned. She lifted Cinder gently, faced it eastward, and whispered in Valyrian. Small orange sparks flicked. Not yet, she murmured. But soon. The dragon blinked, as though understanding. Across the cove, a sentry whistled 2 sharp notes. Yora stiffened, hand to sword. A lone rider approached along the cliff ledge, Dothraki, hair shorn short, carrying no banner. When he reached speaking distance, he dismounted and raised empty hands. Khaleesi, he called in the true tongue. I bring words from the Mother of Mountains. Daenerys strode forward cautiously. The rider bowed. The Dashkaleen have dreamt. Silver moon bears 3 burning stars. The stars weep blood upon the grass. One star falls across the poison water to wake stone. He paused, throat working. They bid you remember sacred words. Vezov Annie Astat your hadif. Your womb quickens. Gasps rippled. Yora's eyes flashed to her belly. Daenerys laid a hand there, heartbeat fluttering beneath palm. Tell the Dashkaleen their blood still flows in me, she said softly. The rider touched fist to chest, mounted, and rode west toward storms. Daenerys closed eyes, felt salt sting lashes. A babe within, 3 without, a realm ablaze before. I must be stronger, she whispered. Yora folded her cloak across shoulders. You already are. In Moat Caelan's central tower, Robb Stark studied a crude map pinned to a worm-eaten table. Carnage sprawled along riverlands, crownlands, storms end by rumor. Ironborn reavers dotted western shores. Bolton's scouts reported Lannister movements along the Gold Road, but nothing decisive. As he traced routes by candlelight, Catelyn entered, hair plastered to cheeks by cold drizzle. Robb straightened. Mother! She crossed the chamber, eyes shining with relief tempered by worry. He kissed her brow. When did you reach the neck? This dawn, she replied. Lord Howland's ferrymen rode through the reeds at night. She placed crumpled letter on map. Ned's hand, shaky but resolute. Robb read, jaw tightening. Father rides soon. Catelyn touched his wrist. And would risk reopening wounds. We must keep north strong until truth breaks lies. Outside, gray wind howled along ruined rampart. Rain fell harder. Robb looked northward where pine met slate sky. If dragons rule the south, we hold winter's snows. Starks are hard to burn. Catelyn managed a tired smile. May winter come quickly then. In Pike's Sea Tower, Asha Greyjoy studied foam spatter on leaded glass. Old Town next, she urged Balon at council. High towers fleet away patrolling. We strike before roses bloom. Victarion grunted agreement. Balon's gaze lingered on a captured map pinched from a burned Stormlander barge. Routes of Tyrell grain convoys toward capital. We choke Lion's belly, he mused. Let mainland lords starve while we pluck their coasts. Asha drummed fingers. But if dragons fall upon our ships? Balon snorted. Wings tire, sea never. Yet whispers of 3 dragons unsettled even Kraken hearts. Priests of the drowned god muttered tales of black Leviathan, foe of storm serpent Merling King. Asha rolled her eyes. Metal drowns same as flesh, she told them. But fire floats. No one laughed. At Dragonstone, Melisandre knelt within firelit chamber deep beneath Basalt Keep, the air thick with salt rot and ancient soot. She scattered lashes of seaweed upon brazier coals and poured ruby-hued oil over them. Flames snapped emerald for a heartbeat, then flared crimson. She peered into heart of blaze, seeking shape of victory. Images leapt. A stag rent by Talon, a wolf lunging through flame, a kraken strangling roots of a weirwood, and behind all, wings, wings of dusk, wings of dawn, wings eclipsing sun. She whispered prayer to Lawler, begging clarity. The fire spat, then dimmed. When it brightened anew, she saw only a shadow with glowing eyes. A crown of twisting horns above, a sword of black fire below. Her breath caught. Azor Ahai, she murmured, but the figure split in two, one half cloaked in night blue scales, the other in drifting snow. Footsteps echoed outside. Ser Axel Florent entered, face pinched. My lady, the king demands your counsel. Scouts sight dragon thrice this eve. Melisandre rose. The greater the night's blackness, the clearer fire burns, she said. Axel blinked. Does that mean we turn back? She smiled gently. It means we blaze brighter. By mid-morning rain in King's Landing lessened to drizzle, revealing a field of the dead. Joffrey demanded the heads of Kopono and every notable rider be piked outside the gate of the gods as proof of victory. Gold cloaks balked. Too many corpses, too few pike staffs. Joffrey ordered 500 new poles hewn from the Kingswood at once. Cersei overruled the order, citing defense of walls. Joffrey sulked, then declared he would lead a procession through the city to prove the king unafraid. Pycelle warned of disease in flooded alleys, but Joffrey stamped foot until his mother relented. The Hound refused detail. He'd left the king's service at dawn. That left Ser Marentrant and Ser Boros to guard the royal litter. Tyrion watched preparations with one swollen eye and muttered to Bronn, "Perhaps the people will show their love with rotten cabbages. Rotten heads if fortune smiles," Bronn replied. When the procession set out, crowds lined the streets, faces gaunt, clothes rain-soaked. They cheered half-heartedly at first, then grew louder as Joffrey tossed copper stars. But coins quickly vanished into mud, and hunger gnawed again. Near Cobbler's Square, someone hurled a heel of hard bread. It struck Ser Boros's helm and clattered away. The king's face flushed. A gold cloak darted into crowd. Shouts rose. Another loaf flew, then stones. Panic rippled. Joffrey shrieked for order. A rough brick hit the litter rail, splintering. Ser Maren drew steel. The mob surged. Guards swung truncheons. Chaos flowered bloody. Tyrion, following on horseback with drum corps, cursed and shoved Mount forward, bellowing for calm. No one listened. Bronn's men formed wedge, but missile after missile rained. A stonemason's hammer clipped Tyrion's shoulder, nearly unhorsing him. He glimpsed faces twisted by famine and terror, faces of men he'd once vowed to defend. Only the sudden shadow of a dragon wheeling overhead scattered the mob. Wings beat torrent of wind, dust swirled, screams nodded into hush. The green dragon swooped low, tail slashing air, then soared again toward the river. His passing left silence broken only by sobs. Joffrey's litter turned back, procession aborted. That evening Cersei forbade the king from leaving castle until further notice. Joffrey sulked until tears came. Cersei drank arbor red until dawn. In Flea Bottom, the sparrows pulled corpses from flooded alleys, stacking them for burning. Some bodies bore scorch marks from dragon flame, others blackened boils of plague. A young septon named Lothar preached that dragons heralded the end of days, urging the poor to break chains of earthly lords and follow only the seven. His fervor drew dozens. By twilight they marched, hammers and torches aloft, chanting for the fall of harlot queens. Gold cloaks dispersed them with cudgels, but sparks remained, ready to kindle given fresh wind. In a shuttered wine sink nearby, Varys met with a woman cloaked in charcoal wool, the same washerwoman who'd welcomed Arya's band before they slipped away. "Little birds sing northern tunes," Varys murmured, pouring wine. "The wolf girl travels upriver." The woman nodded. "She slips shadow to shadow. Shadows grow restless," Varys mused. "Perhaps light should guide her path." He slid a purse across. "Give this to the ferryman at Salt Pans. Tell him the Song of Ice and Ash has many verses yet." Night fell heavy upon Blackwater Bay, cloaking the battered stag fleet as it slipped through Broken Chain Gap. Davos at Betha's prow steered by whispered stars, reefs jagged beneath. In the distance, Maegor's walls glimmered with torch rows, like embers along a knife's edge. No green flames flickered now, wildfire stalks nearly spent. Yet danger lay deeper. Towers bristled wide. Tach scorpion bolts, archers, fresh cauldrons of pitch simmering. Davos's palms sweated on tiller. "One volley of Greek fire and we roast," muttered the helmsman. Davos forced a grin. "We've outrun the worst of storms. Walls are but stone. A lie for courage's sake. Stone kills same as wave." Behind them, Melisandre stood on forecastle deck, arms spread wide. She sang again in Valyrian. The words coiled like dragon smoke through damp air. Flames burst along cressets she had placed earlier, though no tinder touched them. Sailors muttered but rowed harder. When the first stag galley nosed against Fishmarket Wharf, Stannis himself vaulted plank before the gangway steadied, sword raised. Men followed, splashing knee-deep through tidewater pooled on cobbles. They seized watchpost, slew sleepy guards, hauled chain to more warship. Yet horns blared from the river gate. Defenders roused quick. Flaming arrows arced, lighting nets soaked in lamp oil along waterfront. The harbor ignited anew, pale yellow not green, but no less deadly. Smoke billowed seaward, choking advanced marines. Stannis refused retreat. "Forward," he roared. His voice cracked stone. Davos leapt beside, short sword ready, and together they led Wedge through narrow lanes choking with fish scales and rot. Resistance stiffened. Hound Crest Knights under Ser Talad blocked alley. Bolt throwers atop merchant balconies spat iron. Battle churned close, personal, lit only by flames gutter and moon glimpsed through ragged cloud. At every corner, Stannis pressed. At every push, the city bled more. Inside Red Keep's audience hall, Tyrion limped before council. Fresh bandage on shoulder, hair singed. "Stannis in the fish market by now," he rasped. "We draw him uphill." Kevin Lannister sat in Tywin's stead, brow furrowed. "Hill bleeds lions, too."
Maße Tyrell pest, Sword tep ingbot.
"My levy encircles from Rose Road. One dawn more, and we squeeze them." Pycelle whined about wounded numbers. Varys offered faint smile. "Perhaps a smaller door opens." Littlefinger twirled quill. "A dragon door?" he asked. Silence followed. Tyrion's pulse drummed. Dragons answer no summons. Peter's smile widened. Gold gilds tongues, even scaly ones. Cersei's laugh cut him off. Gold did not save Valyria. She drained goblet. "I prefer wildfire." "None left," Tyrion snapped. She set cup down hard. "Then find more." "Find?" he echoed. "Shall I pluck green demons from the air?" The council dissolved into bickering until a runner burst panting. Stannis pierced First Market Square, banners visible from Street of Sisters. Tyrion slammed fist on table. "We meet him." Kevin stood. "We hold walls." Tyrion glared. "Walls crumble. We strike." Cersei's laughter echoed again, but there was hysteria beneath. She turned, skirts swirling, and stalked from hall to find her son. Tyrion marched to armory, though each step sent fire through ribs. Bronn fell in beside, short sword on shoulder. "How many times can one city fall in 1 week?" "Every sunrise until we surrender," Tyrion groaned. Bronn grinned. "I surrender to no one but coin." "Then keep pockets tight," Tyrion huffed. They passed courtyard where Sansa knelt amid wounded again, binding a hedge knight's stump with linen. Tyrion paused. She met his gaze. "There are too many," she whispered. He nodded. "There will be more." Her lower lip quivered. Then she straightened. "Lord Tyrion," she said steadily, "if the walls break, will you protect them?" Her gesture embraced ragged line of small folk clustered beneath arch. "I will try," he answered. She dipped head. "Try harder." The dwarf bowed back, then hurried on. In the ragged streets west of September of Baelor, Sandor Clegane walked alone, sword still sheathed, helm left behind. He moved like a restless mastiff sniffing wind for scent of lightning. Firelight flickered from an alley brazier, illuminating puddles. Every red reflection reminded him of flames licking skin, fires his brother thrust him into. He stopped, panting. Somewhere distant a dragon roared. He almost laughed. Monsters above, monsters below, and all fools between. A girl's voice drifted. "Please, food." He turned. A waif no taller than his knee held out filthy hand. Sandor dug in pouch, produced crust. She snatched, devoured. Her eyes huge, reflecting torch glow. He knelt. "Name." She swallowed. "Lena." "Parents." She pointed to rubble where two shapes lay unmoving. Rain mottled their skin. The hound's chest tightened. "Come," he said gruffly, lifting her. He carried her toward Red Keep's granary where stew still bubbled for wounded. Guards hesitated. His glare parted them. Inside kitchen, Sansa replenished kettles. She saw Sandor enter carrying child. Their eyes met. He laid girl on bench, then turned away. Sansa caught sleeve. "Thank you." His shoulders twitched. She was hungry. So are many. He faced her, scars cragged. "You feed them while dragons and kings burn them." Tears shimmered in her lashes yet did not fall. "Someone must." He nodded once. Someone must. Then he left, sword still sheathed, night swallowing him. Dawn cracked over the city like old bone, gray and brittle. Stannis's men had taken 3 squares but paid dear. Every advance met by scorpion bolts and heavy pikes thrust from murder holes. At the mud gate, the bodies of Dothraki and Lion Guard lay side by side. Ko Pono's head, half burned, still faced river where dead ships drifted. Tyrion leaned on spear across rampart, surveying. Bronn beside. Another day, the cell's word muttered. Tyrion coughed blood into handkerchief. Another dragon. They stared east where 3 shapes circled far beyond walls, never quite approaching. Inside Maegor's holdfast, Cersei nursed a goblet at window. Joffrey paced. "Why do they not burn us?" he demanded. Cersei's voice, rough. "Perhaps they wait for price." Joffrey drew dagger, admired reflection. "I'll give them your head," he sneered. She slapped him sharp. Silence after. She touched bruise blossoming on his cheek, remorse flickering, then turned away. Wine dulled remorse. At Riverrun, Ned Stark eased into saddle under overcast sky. Cloak fur-lined though warmth still clung to River Valley. Catelyn protested. He silenced her softly. "Truth rides swifter than fever," he said. Robb would not leave Moat Cailin yet. North needed eyes south. With him rode Ser Brindan, 24 Northmen under flints, and a Ravenkeeper to bear letters sealed for Storm's End, Dragonstone, White Harbor. Hoster Tully's funeral barge drifted downriver even then, candles flickering around preserved form. Ned watched until barge vanished beyond bend, then turned horse west toward Twins Road. Though pain lanced each stride, purpose held him upright. He must reach Storm's End or Dragonstone, whichever accepted parley first. He must speak truth of Joffrey's birth, reveal dragon threat, plead for realm's salvation. And if words failed, a sword remained. As riders trotted through wet meadow, a direwolf howled far north. Ned set heels and quickened pace. Beyond the stepstones, Daenerys's fleet caught a following wind. Sails bellied, cogs surged eastward. On forecastle, she stood flanked by Eyrie and Yora. The cream dragon perched on rail, green drake circling mast. Cinder rode her shoulder. Ahead lay Pentos, then the long road of Essos, Volantis, Karth, Meereen. Allies, Sellswords, destinies. Behind, Westeros smoldered under Dragon's watchful eyes. She inhaled briny gust. "I am the storm they fear," she said. Yora smiled grimly. "Storm and dawn both." She considered.
Nu, Sir Jorah.
Storms pass. Dawn rises. She lifted chin, eyes reflecting sunrise cresting clouds. "I am dawn." The dragon on her shoulder spread wings, caught first ray, and the light glittered like a promise across nascent scales. The ship cut foam. Gulls scattered. The horizon widened. And in the land they left behind, crowns cracked, thrones trembled, swords sang. Fire had only begun its dance with shadow, and the song of ice and ash echoed in every heart still beating beneath that darkling sky.